Everyone, and good evening, Linden. We are excited to be here tonight. This is the second of 3 of our capital improvement budget hearings. So again, want to thank you all for being here. We are in person here at the beautiful Linden Recreation Center here in North Linden, and super excited to be here with you all tonight. Again, first want to thank all of my colleagues who are here with me. I know Councilmember Remy is on his way. My partner in good, Councilmember Benoso de Padilla, who chairs our Public Service Committee and also vice chairs the Economic Development Committee with me, so she helps to keep me in line from time to time. So I want to thank you for being here tonight. Also, I want to thank our department leaders who are here with us to discuss the administration's plan for the proposed capital budget. You will hear from them shortly. Also want to thank our area commissions and civic association leaders for their input to date. I know I see some of our area commissioners in the audience. I want to thank you all for being here. I know North Linden is proud. Area Commission, they always show up and always make sure that they give us their input, so I appreciate their continued advocacy. I'm sorry, and South Linden is in the house too. I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry. Linden, one Linden in general, that's right. But no, all the area commissions to date who submit requests to us, but also want to thank our community engagement team. We got to take bus tours with our neighbors in the south side and east side to really go and see and feel some of those projects that folks are asking for and requesting. It's one thing to get a great proposal, and we have, again, area commissioners and advocates who put that on paper. It's another thing to go out and actually touch and feel and see it. So again, thank you to our civic leaders for all the work you do day to day in our communities. And lastly, of course, I want to thank all the residents who are here today, because at the end of the day, all we do is for all of our residents here in the city of Columbus. The purpose of these hearings is really straightforward, is to present the city's capital improvement budget and also the capital improvement program to residents. Tonight's conversation is the second public meeting in a series of 3 public conversations on this topic. Our last one was virtual, and so that is live for you on the city's YouTube pages and other CTV accounts where you can watch that. The capital projects we are discussing tonight concern physical assets in the city. That's our roads, our waterways, and other physical infrastructure. So unlike the operating budget, today we're talking about the stuff you get to touch and feel. The things that you'll experience every single day driving down Hudson for the past 2 years, which is coming along, and construction is a headache. But what I tell folks is when I see construction, when I see delays, when I see orange barrels, what I see is progress, especially for neighborhoods like Linden, who have not seen that in our city's history. It is their time to also share in our city's prosperity. And so when we see that construction going on, that's what we're here to talk about today. We understand how important these infrastructure investments are, and for that reason, it has been a long-standing practice in the city of Columbus to set aside a quarter of every dollar collected via the city income tax for capital projects. So what we do is we set aside a quarter of every dollar that we pay we all pay as residents in income tax to pay for these projects. That's why we're able to have such a robust capital budget year over year compared to some other cities our size. This funding structure ensures that the city is able to consistently put out these capital budgets every year. The city's AAA bond rating ensures that the city can borrow money at a low interest rate, and as a result, it saves Columbus taxpayers millions of dollars every year for those projects at that lower interest rate. Tonight's hearing will be simple in structure. We will start with presentations from our departments of finance and management, followed by presentations from public service, recreation and parks, public safety, the Department of Development, and also the Department of Public Utilities. Following the presentations and questions from council members, we will open the floor to speakers who have signed up to speak. Also tonight, if you didn't sign up to speak, that's fine. If you have a question, we want to make sure that we get that answered for you. There's a microphone in the back. Just JP as well as Stanley, if you just raise your hands, if you all want to ask questions, just get with one of them, and we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to speak. Additionally, my team will also be best tracking comments that come through on Facebook and YouTube. It is always a tradition of mine to make sure we engage our neighbors who are viewing virtually, so we'll make sure we try to answer those questions as well. And depending on specificity of any question raised by residents, either our department or my office will get back to you with a question if we don't have the answer for you tonight. The capital budget you'll hear about tonight is a proposed budget, not the final. It is through these public input comments, the comments that we receive from our area commissions and other forums, that the City Council will have a process and community conversation that we will arrive to a final product the Council will vote on, ideally later this month before we go on break. With us tonight, we have Chris Long, who's our Deputy Director in the Department of Finance. My partner in good, I chair the Finance and Governance Committee, so Chris and I get to work closely together. Steve Wenzel, who is our Deputy Director in the Department of Public Service, is here with us. Craig Murphy, Deputy Director of Capital Conservation and Strategy in the Department of Recreation and Parks. I don't know how he fit that on a business card, but he is here with us as well. Dan Giangardella, which is our Deputy Director in the Department of Public Safety. Bill Webster, Deputy Director in the Department of Development. And last but not least, John Lee, Deputy Director in the Department of Utilities, is here with us as well. So before we get to our department presentations, I will kick it over to Councilmember Barroso de Padilla. If you have any opening remarks that you want to share, if not, no pressure.
Well, first, thank you, Chair Bankston, for the opportunity. And I just want to echo our thanks to all of our residents that show up. So obviously, we hold these. We have the first one virtual to ensure that residents have access, and wherever you are, that you can watch this, that you can dial in, that you can send in comments. But certainly when we host these in different areas of town, this is a capital improvement budget for the entire city. And, you know, we make a joke about one Linden, but we are truly one Columbus, and really the prosperity of one side of town relies on the prosperity of all sides of town, and ensuring that every person and every resident has access to everything that our city has to offer. And so I want to thank folks who have taken the time to either send an email, reach out to our office, all of our area commissions that do prioritize some of the things that they are hearing from residents. I urge folks to attend, to listen in if you haven't heard an entire capital budget hearing, or come to the next budget hearing that we have, even if it's on the south side of Columbus. It's not just for south side residents, it's for all residents, to ensure that we hear and have the voice of our residents at top of mind as we make some of these budget decisions. Obviously, this is a proposal of where we want to direct these funds, but as always, our residents have influence over how those decisions are made. And this is one moment in time where we are making investments in certain projects. That does not mean that there will not be many other moments or many other opportunities for us to make these same type of investments in communities. And so this is the start of a conversation, not the end, certainly not the end of a conversation, but really the start of how do we ensure that folks have all of the amenities that are, and really I say amenities, but they're really just the wants and needs that we all have, right? Safe places to walk, safe places to live, safe places to play, from our youngest to our oldest folks. So again, I just want to echo your thanks to also all of our department heads that are here for all of the great work that you do every day. You guys get to see our faces often, but you don't always get to hear from the folks who quite literally make our city run every day. And this is a huge body of work and a huge body of undertaking, and represents just a fraction of everything that they do every day. So I just want to thank all of our folks at the city that make this a place that people want to be and want to live. So back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, and appreciate all the work that you're doing, particularly in public service. And we'll talk a little bit about it tonight, but all of you have probably heard of it, an initiative called Link Us, which is a big undertaking for the city that is really meant to not just simply create bus rapid transit, but it is a way of how do we connect our community. We are growing by leaps and bounds, and we cannot put another 1 million cars on our street. And it is time for us to make sure that we have a mass multimodal transit system that gives people equity and dignity when they take public transit. But more importantly, how we get to that transit matters. And so I know you've been laying the groundwork a lot in public service. This Link Us issue is really something that will be, I think, the game changer for the next generation of people that will call Columbus home. And so with that, we will get into our presentations. As Councilmember Barroso de Padilla said, again, what we're going to go through today is the actual CIB, our capital improvements budget that the mayor has presented to council. There is also a capital improvements program. That is the 6-year projection for capital improvements. And so I know we have hot cards around that you can scan so you can really dive in deep. We didn't want to go through the entire 6-year proposal because tonight was before us as a vote is our budget, but you can have access to that information, and we'll make sure we get that to you. So now I will turn it over to Chris Long, Deputy Director in our Department of Finance, to kick us off. Chris?
Thank you, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla, Councilmember Remy, Council President Harden, and all members of council for this opportunity to present Mayor Ginther's 2024 capital improvement budget. Also, a thank you to all the commission leadership here tonight and all area residents. We really appreciate your time and input to this very valuable process. As Chair Bankston mentioned, my name is Chris Long. I'm a Deputy Director in the Department of Finance. I work for our Finance Director, Kathy Owens, who can't be here this evening. I will be echoing and expanding on many of the comments that Chair Bankston made this evening about the capital budget. And you'll be hearing specifics from departments about very defined projects in the community, but I thought I would kick things off with just a general overview of the capital budgeting process in general. You know, what is a capital budget? How does it differ from an operating budget? The size of this year's capital budget. So kind of some 30,000-foot view items. And of course, at the end, happy to answer any questions. So the city has two main budget cycles, our operating budget cycle and our capital budget cycle. And as Chair Bankston mentioned, the operating budget itself really funds the daily operations of the city. So I kind of think of it like as the 3 S's: staffing, supplies, and services. These are the things that go into city programming. So recreation and parks programming, public safety programming, our health department programming, daily operations of the city. And it's funded largely through our city income tax on the general fund side, and it's funded largely from enterprise revenue on the public utility side. But I know what we're all here to talk about tonight, right, is the city's capital budget. So if the operating budget funds programs, the capital budget funds where those programs occur. So as Chair Bankston mentioned, these are the physical infrastructure of the city. These are the buildings, these are the locations, in some cases the vehicles where city program actually takes place. So roads, sidewalks, rec facilities, public safety locations, water and sewer facilities that you'll hear much more about from our department leadership here tonight. Again, as Chair Bankston mentioned, we have 2 capital budget projections, right? We have a long-term projection, near-term projection. As Chair Bankston mentioned, Capital Improvement Program, or the CIP, is a 6-year forward-looking projection. So it gives a long view of what the city's infrastructures are going to need over the next 6 years. Our capital improvement budget, which is largely the focus of this evening, is the next fiscal year. What does the city need in infrastructure improvements and investments in the next fiscal year? And we call that our capital improvement budget. It is funded by municipal bonds. So as I know you can all imagine, with a $2 billion capital budget, we're talking about very large, long-term capital improvement projects. And the city does not have cash on hand to fund all of those projects at one time. So we have to go out to market, to the bond market, and sell municipal bonds. And those are paid for by a 25% set aside from our income tax, as Chair Bankston mentioned, and it's also paid for by our utility rates. So user rates on public utility side help pay for capital infrastructure projects on public utility side. In terms of process, you know, how does a capital budget get developed? Finance's role is a central role in the sense that, number one, we partner with our city auditor to set capacity. You know, we never want to have a situation where the city doesn't have ability, right, to fund infrastructure projects, both near term and long term. So we work to make sure that we can pay for what we're asking our residents and council for approval for. So we help set capacity. And then we also compile all of the departmental requests. So our departments are in the best position to know what specific projects would fit under their purview. They submit those to finance. We compile those for review by Mayor Ginther. So Mayor, this is the mayor's budget. He's reviewed it, approved it. And so we compile, and then we also assist in issuing bonds. Again, as Chair Bankston mentioned, very proud of a AAA bond rating at the city. It's a testament to the fiscal strength of the city, and it allows us to really get municipal bond loans at incredibly low interest rates. We're one of the very few large cities that are able to maintain that type of high credit rating, so we're very proud of that. This year's capital budget has been informed through a lens of equity. So the mayor's equity initiative is called Opportunity Rising, and there's you can see a web link there if you want to find out a little bit more about it. But essentially, city departments have been building their capital budget request for 2024 around Opportunity Rising. And it's built around three foundational guiding principles, which are safe and resilient communities, the health and well-being of residents, and economic stability of the local community. So you'll be hearing again more about that from departments this evening. This next slide is just a quick snapshot of it. It's, for us fiscal people, this is interesting stuff, but it's a 10-year history of the city's capital budget going back to 2015. You'll see the big thing on this slide is the city's capital budget has more than doubled in the last 10 years. It's gone from a little less than $1 billion in 2015 to almost $2 billion in the proposed 2024 capital budget. And this is really just a testament to the strength and resiliency of the residents of this city. So we're very happy to report that. This is just a quick snapshot of the breakdown of this year's capital budget. The red indicates the portion of this year's proposed capital budget that's funded by our Department of Public Utilities. So it's enterprise funded or user rate funded. And then the blue section is the portion that's funded by a 25% income tax set aside that was mentioned by Chair Bankston earlier this evening. So just a quick snapshot on that.
What is enterprise?
Oh, yes, sorry. So enterprise would be anything that's Department of Public Utilities related. So they bill users, water, sewer, electricity, and so the bills that all our users pay go into the enterprise fund. Thank you. So this next slide, just very quickly, in addition to finance compiling the capital budget, we're also a user of the capital budget. We're a user agency. And so the management side of the finance and management title is our department manages almost all of the general fund facilities of the city. So over 100 different buildings. So we're talking about municipal campus, all public safety locations, fire stations, police substations, administration buildings. So it's quite a bit. And most of what you see here is about maintaining those city facilities. So things like facility renovations, roof renovations, security upgrades, et cetera. The one large, as you'll see, largest line item on this list is municipal court building. That would be for the construction of a new municipal court building that would be constructed here downtown and is currently in phase 1 design, which would most likely break ground if all goes well on design late next year. And then finally, just some basic information about contact information for our finance department. Our director is Kathy Owens. Kyle Severhart heads up our capital team. She did a lot of the work to develop this year's capital budget, her and Diana Veason on the team. There's my contact number, direct line, and then of course, anyone who wants to know, there's a wealth of details at the link that you see there. It's columbus.gov/capital. Feel free to visit it, ask questions, send me emails, and certainly happy to. And with that, Chair Bankston and members of council, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Deputy Director. And listen, I can attest, at City Hall, we ain't got no air conditioning right now. That's what me and her was just.
Sorry, Chair Bankston.
Sure, I wasn't gonna say it, but so we need some facility improvements. But I'm just joking. No, thank you.
For the second time.
This is actually the second. This is the second time in a week. So we'll get it. We'll get there. We'll get there. No, I just want to thank you for that, and I just wanted to point out too to residents, if you noticed that we talk about 1.99 billion. That's a lot of money. But if you saw over $1 billion of that is public water and sewer infrastructure. That's always going to be the lion's share because safe drinking water is a big priority for us. It's one of our #1 priorities, but it is the most expensive. Doing sewer and all the things that you see underground, a lot of folks for many times don't see that as an investment, because we don't see it at the end of the day. It's just a headache, but safe, clean drinking water is a huge part of that. One thing I did want to point out in that presentation, and you won't hear a lot of questions from me because I did ask a lot in our first one. I want to make sure that we get through this so that we can get to residents' input, is around the municipal courthouse. A lot of money that we're going to spend. We know that it's probably even north of that. But can we just talk about, I know we're early in, and also I see our Director of Office of Diversity and Inclusion here. Just talk about our commitment to diversity and inclusion goals on that particular project. We talk about $170 million plus. That's a lot of public dollars that we're investing. So if you just talk about our diversity, equity, inclusion goals on that project, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair Banks. So, yeah, we're very happy to report that this project will have a community benefits agreement associated with it, and will have small and minority business goals associated with that. So we're very, very happy to partner with Director Jenkins and his team to ensure that yes, that those goals are met.
Thank you for that. Any questions from my colleagues?
I do have a question, Assistant Long. When we talk about the prioritization of some of those improvements that we're making, especially for those city-run buildings that we have, which we have a number of them, how do we make those priorities? How do we make those decisions? Especially when I think about, the fiscal responsibility of just having a building that's there and going into disrepair. It's just going to cost us more. And we all know that the cost of things and the cost of materials and supplies, design, costs more in the long run. So can you just talk to us a little bit about how we decide and when in the lifespan of a building we're going to make some of those improvements?
Yeah, thank you, Council Member. So yes, our Division of Facilities Management has conducted a number of facility condition assessments. So it is basically exactly what you had indicated. It's an outside firm that comes in, looks at all of those 100 facilities, and really just looks at everything, HVAC, electrical, roofing, and basically it tells us here's when we think we need to invest in upgrades for those. So, yeah.
And is that done on a rolling, kind of rotating basis?
Yes. So, yeah, we have a standing contract with a firm that basically comes in each year and kind of updates that assessment. Thank you.
Councilmember?
You don't have to push
You
it.
don't have to.
Oh, sorry. I forgot you guys are the mastermind. CTV, thank you for being here once again. Just in follow-up to that, let's talk about our sustainability goals as it relates to our own facilities. I know there was some conversation, Kyle addressed some questions in the Department of Utilities and Sustainability about what we're doing in regards to our own facilities, solar and other types of roof materials, to really make sure that we're capitalizing on what we're doing for our master plan.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. So, yeah, the Department of Finance has a fairly close partnership with our Department of Public Utilities, and they have an Office of Sustainability that is housed in that department. And as Councilmember Remy mentioned, the city has a climate action plan. And one element of that is to ensure that our buildings, that they're retrofit, that we're upgrading them in the ways that are more sustainable, whether it be lighting, HVAC, controls, roofing. And we currently have dollars set aside, not in this particular capital budget, but carryover dollars that are set aside in our Department of Finance to do those types of upgrades. Thank you, Councilman.
And then just to follow up a little bit on the courthouse, we're excited about this. This is in the planning stages. The architects are working, very closely with the courthouse, but this is the #1 courthouse in the state of Ohio, not by any stretch of the imagination. More cases, more ingenious programs. I mean, there are so many great programs that they're doing over there, but they see more cases than Cuyahoga, Hamilton, and Butler combined. So this is an important facility for this community. We're excited for the investment that we're making as a city, and we're making sure that we have the facilities to make sure that we're treating people with respect and dignity as they go through the judicial process. And so it's exciting to see this money come forward. It's exciting to see the programs that are working out of that courthouse, and we'll continue to do that work and look forward to that groundbreaking in the end of next year, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Sound like someone who chairs public service and criminal justice committee. I don't know. Seems a little biased to me. But anyway, no, safety, yes. Thank you for that. Next, we will move on to Steve Wenzel, our Deputy Director for our Department of Public Service. Steve?
Good evening, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Barossa de Padilla, Councilmember Remy, members of the community. My name's Steve Wenzel. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Service. Thank you for this opportunity to briefly speak about the Department of Public Services 2024 capital improvements budget and to detail some of the projects that we have contained within. The Department of Public Services proposed 2024 capital improvements budget is made up of $248.6 million this year. That's kind of broken down between $77.9 million in new funding, as well as $170.7 million in carryover funding that will invest in roadways, sidewalks, bikeways, bridges, and other projects that will improve quality of life in our neighborhoods. Some of the guiding principles that we use when we're developing our capital improvements budget stems from our mission statement itself within public service, is to deliver unparalleled public services in Columbus to enhance equitable mobility, safety, and quality of life. Public service focuses on capital budgets to create equitable mobility, access to jobs, schools, healthcare, and other services. The Public Service Department is leading the planning, design, and construction of many city infrastructure projects, supporting Vision Zero principles to slow speeds and create safe conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and transit users. As in most years, the centerpiece of Public Services proposed capital budget is $53.5 million in new and carryover funding for the city's resurfacing program. The Department of Public Service maintains approximately 5,700 lane miles of city roadways. The resurfacing program mills the existing pavement and replaces it with new asphalt, performs partial and full depth pavement repairs, ADA ramp upgrades, curb repair, and pavement markings. This year, we'll have 4 major resurfacing projects totaling $42 million. With these projects, the department plans to resurface 275 streets and construct over 1,100 ADA curb ramps across the city. The department also plans to spend another $1.6 million on brick and concrete rehab of some of our streets throughout the city. Some of the streets, or a sample of the streets that will be resurfaced here on the north side, is Gladstone Avenue from 18th to 25th, Finley Avenue from Arcadia Avenue to Clinton Street, West Street from Park Road to Oak Street, and St. Clair Avenue from 19th to 21st Avenue. Included in this year's capital budget is new funding in the amount of $3.5 million and another $5 million in carryover funding for our bridge rehabilitation program. The type of work typically performed on our bridges includes patching of concrete surfaces, painting, replacement of joint seals, and crack sealing. As Councilmember Bankston mentioned, there's a big program that's within our capital budget called Link Us. It includes in our 2024 capital improvement budget of $18 million that's associated with this initiative. $15 million of that is coming from our carryover funding, and another $3 million is coming from new funding. Link Us is Central Ohio's comprehensive mobility initiative aimed at addressing growth, affordability, and opportunity gaps within our community, making significant investments in transit, sidewalks, bikeways, trails, and roadway improvements. One of the key projects within the Link Us initiative is the Northwest Bus Rapid Transit, or BRT corridor, which has been allocated $4 million in the 2024 capital improvements budget. An additional $3 million in new funding has been requested for the corridor's design completion. The remaining $11 million of allocated budget will contribute to advancing multiple projects that improve transit and pedestrian access along the Northwest Corridor. Additionally, these funds will facilitate ongoing design efforts for the West Broad Street and East Main Street BRT corridors. Also included in this proposed capital improvements budget are other important investments in our community. This budget proposal includes $2.8 million in new funding and carryover funding, which is leveraging another $1.3 million in grant funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation for the intersection improvements at Cleveland Avenue and Hudson Street project. So this project will tie into the existing Hudson Street project, and it consists of adding northbound and southbound left turn lanes, adding a westbound right turn lane, reconstruction to the signal to improve signal visibility, and improvements to pedestrian safety along the south side of Hudson. The 2024 budget request also includes $792,000, leveraging another $575,000 in community development block grant funds for the intersection improvements at Cleveland Avenue and Myrtle Avenue project. This project includes the realignment of Cleveland Avenue through the intersection with Myrtle. Work includes curb removal and installation, resurfacing, full signal replacement, reinstallation of interconnect, relocation of street lighting and power lines. The water line will be lowered, and installation of storm sewer down Myrtle Avenue. Also, we'll replace the signal and fix the deficient curve that will enhance safety at the intersection. This budget proposal also includes $8.5 million, which is $3.1 million in carryover funding, and another $5.4 million in new funding for the city's Vision Zero initiative. The Vision Zero Columbus program is focused on ending crash-related fatalities and serious injuries on our streets while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. The Vision Zero Columbus Action Plan 2023 to 2028 outlines specific actions and strategies focused on eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries in our city. This $8.5 million commitment continues the implementation of this action plan. A sample of the Vision Zero projects included in this budget are the Crosswalk Enhancements Project at $1.1 million for construction. This project includes upgrading signage and striping, as well as possible installation of pedestrian islands, pedestrian crossing beacons, and curb extensions at 14 different locations. Some of the 14 locations here on the north side include Chittenden Avenue and Indianola Avenue on the west side of the intersection, Stelzer Road at the Sam's Club Walmart Access Drive, and Lazelle Road at Seattle Avenue, and also Cleveland Avenue at Abbott Nutrition, just outside of downtown. This 2024 capital budget proposal includes $31.4 million in new and carryover funding for mobility safety improvements, which includes sidewalks, bikeways, and shared use paths. The 2024 budget includes $800,000 in design costs for the pedestrian safety 17th Avenue project. This project involves the replacement of curb and sidewalk along 17th Avenue from I-71 to Billiter Boulevard. These improvements include signal replacement and installation of bump outs. This budget also includes $817,000 for construction of the pedestrian safety Walford Street, Charbot Drive, and Northtown Boulevard sidewalks project. This project will install sidewalks and fill in gaps along both sides of Walford Street from Belcher Drive to Morse Road, and on Charbot Drive from Tamarack Boulevard to Carahan Road, and on Northtown Boulevard from Morris to Jonathan Court. The budget also includes $500,000 for right-of-way acquisition for the Bikeway Sancus Boulevard Shared Use Path project. This project consists of a new shared use path, or SUP, along the west side of Sancus Boulevard from Lakeview Plaza Boulevard, which is Worthington Galena Road area, to Worthington Woods Boulevard. The 2024 capital improvements budget also includes $8.8 million for refuse collection vehicles and containers to replace and update the division's fleet that service over 346,000 households every week. Some of this equipment will be dedicated to support the Clean Neighborhoods Initiative to address the persistent problem of illegal dumping in our neighborhoods. Lastly, looking ahead at our priorities in the capital improvement program that Deputy Director Chris Long had mentioned and Councilmember Bankston from 2025 to 2029. Some of the major investments that we'll be making is continued investment in our Vision Zero initiative, roughly $5.3 million a year, or $26.5 million over that 5-year period. We're going to dedicate $20 million in funded resurfacing dollars each year for the next 5 years, or $100 million. Mobility funding will be $6 million per year, roughly $30 million over that 5-year period. And the bridge program will be at $3.4 million per year, or $17 million over the 5-year period. Again, I'd like to thank council, members of the community, for letting me propose or go over the proposed 2024 capital improvements budget for Department of Public Service. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director, for that. I do want to make one clarification for folks. So when we talk about the capital improvements budget, it is both council reauthorizing money that wasn't spent in last year's budget, plus giving the city authority to go borrow new money. So you heard in the Deputy Director's presentation, carryover money or versus new money. That carryover money is basically, many of the projects that we do, as you can imagine, are multi-year projects. And so sometimes they don't get done within that calendar year. So what we're doing with this budget is authorizing them to continue to spend money from previous budgets that we've passed, as well as go out and borrow new money. So I just wanted to make sure I made that clarification for folks on that note. Also, again, want to thank, and I want to highlight specifically, I did this in the last one, the Hudson and Cleveland intersection, as well as the Myrtle and Cleveland intersection, are huge, huge wins for this community. So I want to thank many folks in this room, because when we talk about the One Linden Community Plan, those were top priorities for this community, and we're getting them done. So I see Adam Troy, as well as Commissioner Jasmine Ayers here, who were instrumental in their work. So I just wanted to shout them out and thank them, because we're continuing to move that One Linden project forward. With that, I'm going to pause, because I already know that the Chair of Public Service here is itching to get some questions in, so I will defer to her. Council member?
Thank you, Chair Bankston. So, Assistant Director, I think there's a couple questions that I think are just standard questions, just so for the knowledge of our residents and understanding what the process looks like. How do we prioritize the streets that we are going to resurface? What does that look like, and what goes into making those decisions year over year?
Yeah, thank you, council member. So there's a number of factors that we use when we're looking at what streets we're going to resurface throughout the season, basically the construction season. So we're looking at the pavement condition. So you'll hear us talk a lot in our department about PCN number, or pavement condition number. So we have a company that we partner with that goes out and assigns different PCN numbers to every street throughout the city. So they can be anywhere from a 40 to a 90. 40 being the worst of the worst, and 90 being some of our better, newer streets that we've just resurfaced. So we take that into consideration. What's the pavement condition number? We also look at how much traffic that street might have. If it's an arterial street that has a lot more traffic, or if it's a residential street that doesn't have as much traffic, maybe it only has 15, 20, 30 cars a day versus a street that has 150 cars an hour. So we take that into consideration. We also take an input from our street maintenance staff, or our infrastructure management staff. These are the gentlemen and the ladies that are out in the streets that are filling the potholes, or out there doing street cuts and really maintaining our roadways. So we take input from them and see if there's anything that's happening out in our roadways that is happening faster than what we expected when we resurfaced the street last. We take input from the public. So your calls to 311, that goes into our factors when we're looking at resurfacing streets. We also look at when was the last time the street was resurfaced. Typically, we try to get anywhere between 15 and 25 years out of a street, depending on what type of street it is, if it's an arterial or if it's a residential street. So we look at when the last time it was resurfaced. It was only resurfaced 5 years ago. What's happening? That might be something different. Maybe it needs to be not on a resurfacing list, but on a full rehab list. And we look at other projects. We don't want to resurface a street if our friends at utilities are getting ready to do a water line. So we want to resurface it and then them come through in a year to tear it up. So we take that into consideration. So, and one of the other things is we try to distribute our resurfacing program throughout the whole city. So when we hear me talk about these different packages that we have, we'll bundle the streets in a certain area, say it's the north or the south or the east or the west corridor, because we get better pricing from our contractors when we do it that way. So they don't have to move their their staff all around the city to resurface our roadways. So we kind of bundle those together to get the best price for the city. So that's some of the considerations we take into account when we're looking at city streets to resurface.
And we actually do those on a rolling basis, so there'll be, as you mentioned, phase 1, phase 2, I think 3? Is there 3 phases?
Sometimes, depending on funding, sometimes we do 3 or 4 phases every year.
And we usually will announce those, and then they'll be listed on the website. So if there is if you are living in a particular street that you feel like might have not made the cut, and that may need that extra time and attention, or there have been some other conditions that have changed, then what can residents do to then advocate for getting that street resurfaced? Or if it's, maybe a section of the street where there might be some deterioration of the street for whatever reason, then how can folks put that on our radar?
Yeah. The first step is going to call 311. So we monitor everything that comes through 311. We make sure we send out a street investigator to investigate what's going on the street and to determine if it needs to be put on a resurfacing list. So definitely utilize 311.
And then the other big question is sidewalks. So we know, first, if you could just talk a little bit about the cost of sidewalks, and also one thing that I have certainly learned as being chair is that for a lot of our larger projects, like even some of the projects that we've listed here, it takes us a number of years because they're funded through both maybe state, federal, local funding, not just our capital improvements budget, but obviously I shouldn't say obviously, but other pieces of funding that we would need to then complete the project, so there's a longer schedule. Sidewalks are pretty costly. Can you just talk about the costs? And then also, how do we prioritize that, especially for a city that is woefully under sidewalked? I shouldn't say woefully, we're getting there, but we are working towards being better sidewalked and having ADA ramps, et cetera.
Thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, so some of the same criteria. Well, first, let's address the cost. So the cost of the sidewalk, roughly in today's dollars, we kind of estimate about $400 per linear foot, so which equates to, when you do the math, about $2.1 million per mile. So the city is probably roughly around, I believe last figures I saw, 1,400 miles worth of streets that do not have sidewalks, which is roughly about 50% of the city streets. So you can imagine that's a big dollar number. So we do have to kind of prioritize and figure out which ones have the biggest need. And we take into some of the same criteria when we're looking at resurfacing. So we look at vehicular traffic, how much traffic is on that street, how is, a street that has more traffic is going to be more unsafe than it is maybe another street that doesn't have as much traffic. 311 request again. We focused on, specific, some of our older neighborhoods that have been lacking sidewalks for a longer period of time might be a consideration. We also look at, where the sidewalks will get you. Is it going to get you to a bus route? Is it going to get you to schools? Is a very important factor for us. So we really want to concentrate on our schools and our children getting to the schools safely. We look at crash data. Unfortunately, that's one of the factors we have to take into account. We also look at, what destinations there are, stores, where jobs, where are people trying to get to? And we look at outside funding sources too. So that's another item that we're trying to piggyback and get some of those federal or those state dollars to help us with our sidewalk program. With that, there's certain, depending on the size of the sidewalk, if it's a matter of just doing gaps, that's a different project if you're putting sidewalks down on a 5-mile stretch of city streets. So if you're doing 5 miles, you're going to have to design those sidewalks ahead of time, which takes, a year. There's probably right-of-way acquisition, because you need to acquire property to put the sidewalk on, which could take another year to 18 months. So, and then if there's funds that we're getting from outside agencies, there's a program that they've established that we're probably talking 3 to 4 to 5 years out before we have the construction dollars available for that. So there's a lot of factors that we look at, as well as that outside funding source.
So I wanted to give that perspective, not because all hope is lost in getting a sidewalk, but just to give the perspective of the challenges that, when we even have a sidewalk project, just the process that we have to go through for both the decision-making, but then also the implementation of the sidewalk as well. And then that brings me to my last question, which is, you mentioned Link Us. Link Us is, when we talk about bus rapid transit, it is quite literally how we're changing how folks move in the city of Columbus. It will be something that is on the ballot for our residents to vote on in November. It will not say link us, it will be a CODA measure. I just want to make sure that folks understand that. But one of the things that's important for folks to also know about Link Us is that it's, again, we talk about it not just being about a bus, but that it also gives us the opportunity to provide infrastructure around an entire transportation system. So that includes trails, that includes more sidewalks, that includes truly protected bike lanes that would be part of a package that we would be able to access with Link Us, federal dollars. I believe it's $60 million per year that would go towards infrastructure projects. That is aside from any capital improvement projects that we either have in the queue or that we are thinking of, correct?
Yeah, that is correct, Councilmember. So the Link Us initiative is basically, you have your bus part of it, which is the transit part. So it's basically your stations, it's your buses, it's your things to move the people around. But there's also a bunch of infrastructure improvements that have to happen around those. So our portion is the right-of-way within the city of Columbus to get to those things. So we're talking, like you're saying, trails, we're talking sidewalks, we're talking, it could be parking even, have a place to park to get onto the bus. So there's a number of factors that we're going to use to basically expand our portfolio to get more sidewalks and get mobility options for our residents.
And then lastly, I just wanted to also give for perspective, one of the council strategies that we've also used is as a new development comes in, many times folks will say, I see a sidewalk to nowhere, an ADA ramp where there isn't a sidewalk. Part of the deal is when there is a new development, they're building a sidewalk in front of that development with the hope that then we can backfill. So that is an additional strategy that we have to address being under sidewalked. So I just want to kind of piecemeal all these strategies together for folks because, again, I think, we started this with as we look at this budget, and as we look at the proposed projects, that's one piece. But then we also have Link Us, which is another piece. We also have development, that's another piece. And then all of these strategies together really help us meet all of our goals to ensure that, again, more of the must-have kind of amenities that folks can count on those when they're thinking about their particular neighborhoods or the things that we might be lacking, that those things might be coming with one of these strategies. So I just wanted to be able to highlight for just a second. So Chair, thank you for indulging me in that because I think this is a good start, but this is certainly only one piece to that puzzle of how we're ensuring that our folks are safer. So. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that context because that's always helpful. And I think the number of roads that we have, like you can get from here to Las Vegas and back, right? I mean, so, and that's always good to give context because I think that many residents don't understand, like that's how many roadways that we have to keep maintain. And you think about major corridors like Morris Road or like those that get much more heavier traffic. So please use 311. They do send out investigators. That's when I was talking about our bus tour that we did in the driving park area. One of the folks from public service was like, when he came out and seen the street, he's like, oh, absolutely, this needs to be, right? Because he didn't know. So, because we maintain over, we're a city of 225 square miles. Again, that much roadway. You are the resident experts. And so sometimes I think it can get lost and folks feel like your voice isn't being heard. But trust me, if it gets on a list, we are trying to get to it. And again, if we don't know, then we don't know. Now, I did not see you on that list Crossing Hill Way. So I just want to make sure, no, I'm just joking, guys. That's my street. That's my street. My street's fine. My street's fine. I'm trying to get you guys to laugh. We're going to be here listening. I got more presentations to get through, okay? Councilmember Remy.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Remy, one other thing that I do want to add is also council has set aside some dollars for some quick fix projects. So that's where 311 does come in handy because that gives us not only, we have not only the metrics of Vision Zero, of the high injury network that we can look at, where we have problematic intersections, but we can also look at what are some of these quick fixes, whether it's road dieting, striping, temporary stop signs, or even places where there isn't a crosswalk and there should be one that we are also helping to fund. So again, that's just one more strategy of how we're starting to tackle some of those more problematic safe intersections across the city. So Councilmember, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Chair Barosa de Padilla. with that quick fix comment that you said, I mean, we see those going in right today along Cleveland Avenue, which were sorely needed for so long. So much more work to be done on Cleveland Avenue since CMAX went in, and we're going to continue to fight for that. But I do want to talk a little bit about refuse as environmental chair for 6 years and, of course, vice chair now. This is the only department in the city of Columbus that travels every single street, every single week, every week of the year. And so that investment in the equipment is imperative to make sure that our residents are served. We're very fortunate that we've moved to weekly recycling as of June of last year, and we're certainly going to continue to find ways to combat illegal dumping. We've invested in our solid waste inspectors. We've invested in cameras and technology to try to catch those individuals that are mistreating our communities, and many times they're not from the city of Columbus. And so I applaud what the administrator, Tim Swager, has been doing over there. We'll complete this year's conversion from 300 gallons to 90 gallons at the end of this year throughout the entire city. Again, a lot of that led to illegal dumping in our alleys, and so we're going to continue to do that work to invest and make sure that, our alleyways are clear and our people feel that, their neighborhoods are not used as dumping grounds. And so it's not a perfect science. We have our roving trash trucks and others that are doing that type of work in the Hilltop and Linden and in Southside and all the other parts of the city that have alleyways. But we're going to continue to plug away. And of course, Cleaner Columbus, we're working and investing in our individuals and youth and our people that are unemployed or underemployed to make sure that they're out there cleaning our streets every single week. And so thank you for the investment. We see that it's necessary. It's an important part of the whole way that this city works. And so applaud you on that. So back to you, Chair Bagston.
No, thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And I'll just say this too, let's encourage our neighbors, use bulk pickup, okay? If we have huge things that we have to throw away, all you have to do is pick up a call and schedule it. Let's encourage our neighbors. There's a way to do this. In other cities, they actually charge you for bulk pickup. We do it for free in the city of Columbus because we want folks to actually utilize it. So make sure you utilize that service. I know all of our area commissioners know how to manage that. You can reach out to your area commission to help you walk through that process, but it's very simple online. And so I would just encourage folks, again, when we talk about that illegal dumping, and we're not talking about construction things, but things like that, but if you're talking about those move-outs or things like you're trying to get rid of, use the bulk service, and they will make sure they get that picked up for you. Councilmember, I think you had a point.
I just want to point out a little bit of the specificity of that, and that is that you cannot put those things out, was it 48 hours, I think? 24? I believe it's 48 hours prior. So if you call and they give you a date 2 weeks ahead, you cannot put those things out until 48 hours prior. That's step one. Step two, you have to be specific in what you're putting out because they design the routes to pick up that bulk pickup by what the contents are. So if you said you had 2 couches, but you actually put 3 couches out, that overloads the system. And so somebody at the end doesn't get picked up, they will pick up that extra couch. And so I just want you to be clear, it's important when you do the 311 call to be clear on what the contents are that you're putting out. Do not put them out prior to 48 hours. Your neighbors don't want to see that. We don't want to see it. Don't put it out ahead of time more than 48 hours. So
We're trying to be efficient. We ain't trying to be in your business, okay? So just tell us what you want picked up. We're gonna come pick it up. We're not gonna judge you. We ain't gonna be in your business, okay? I got some things I need picked up that's coming. My day is next week, actually. Next, we have Recreation and Parks, and we're in a beautiful recreation facility. So we have with us Craig Murphy with the Department of Recreation and Parks. Craig, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you. Is this on? Good evening. Everyone can hear me okay. Clearly a rookie mistake there. Wasn't sure that my mic was working. Good evening, Chair Bankston and members of council, and everyone engaged and interested in learning more about our city capital budget. It is wonderful to look out that window and was watching a couple play tennis, some guys over here playing futsal, and that back window, I could see the kids playing in the playground. But I was listening to every word of the presentations that was going on, but it's great to be here. My name is Craig Murphy, and I work for Recreation and Parks. And again, it's my honor to present this overview of our proposed capital budget. Recreation and Parks proposes $55,709,000 in new funding for 2024, which is captured within the $86,222,741 in ongoing projects from previous years in carryover. Last year, Recreation and Parks received its first ever national accreditation. There are over 12,000 recreation and park agencies in the country, and only 200 of those are accredited. So it means that we follow the national best practices across the country, and we operate our agency in a way that is consistent with those best practices, and it's also how we manage our capital program. So for example, in 2023, we had 97 meetings or engagements with the community relative to our capital program. That included civic associations, area commissions, block watches, and other resident groups. It's this type of engagement that helps inform our capital priorities. Also in 2023, we received, reviewed, analyzed, and logged over 140 requests received via email, 311, or website inquiries related to the capital improvements. This type of engagement helps us shape our capital program, budgeting, and ultimately our implementation strategy. We prioritize taking care of the things that we have by renovating and improving while growing discipline and having an understanding of equity during our planning process. We know that more communities want pools, community centers, athletic facilities, sports courts, playgrounds, and the list goes on. And we see that need too. But we have to balance that growth with timely renovations of existing properties and consolidate facilities and programs whenever possible. While we may not have a community center in all areas of Columbus, we have started the Center Without Walls, which runs after school programs and summer camps at partner locations, primarily school sites. For the north side of Columbus, Recreation and Parks has plans to improve existing facilities while adding some new parks and amenities. This is a very limited snapshot view of Recreation and Parks 2024 budget. It starts with the construction of a new park at the West Case Road. This investment of $12 million of 2024 funding will allow CRPD, our department, to build a 56-acre park and make way for the Columbus Metropolitan Library to open a new facility within that park. This year, Recreation and Parks has begun a multi-phase renovation of areas within Whetstone Park. We will initiate phase 2 of that work by improving the fishing pond, the open-air shelter, and start the design work for eventually replacing the park drive. A community priority from our 10-year master plan is the development of more greenway trails. CRPD will utilize $4.2 million to begin construction on a 2.5-mile segment of the Big Walnut Greenway Trail from Little Turtle Road to Cherry Bottom Park. The Beatty Community Center will utilize $600,000 for minor renovations of its kitchen, lobby, and first floor classroom. And here in Linden, the Linden Green Line is a 7-mile greenway, which we purchased in 2023. That will provide access to a greenway trail for nearly 130,000 residents living within a 10-minute walk of that trail. Recreation and Parks will utilize $300,000 in 2024 to begin the community engagement process, preliminary planning, engineering, and design. Recreation and Parks will also utilize $350,000 of 2024 capital funds to enhance ADA access and mobility at the Franklin Park Adventure Center, which is home to our therapeutic recreation programming. Not everything can be done immediately, and so we rely on a multi-year outlook. So regarding the 6-year capital improvement program, Recreation and Parks will propose and implement far more than what I'm about to share. But for the sake of providing a snapshot of what's ahead on the north side, Columbus Recreation and Parks will request the following projects. First, the replacement of Tuttle pool. Design, that's a big priority of ours. The design is nearly complete, and the construction cost is estimated at $12 million. The Columbus Performing Arts Center is in need of renovation. The estimated construction on this historic structure is $25 million. In 2023, Recreation and Parks adopted a 20-year aquatics plan, and that will shape the future of Columbus aquatics amenities. Last year, the department replaced 2 pools, one at Windsor and one at Glenwood. Our next step towards growing our aquatics programming is the prioritized addition of a new indoor aquatics facility near the Howard Community Center in Northeast Columbus. Design efforts will begin in 2025, and then construction of this facility is estimated at $60 million. Adding a new facility will enable us to then renovate our existing 60-year-old indoor aquatics facility, our current one, and this would put us at 2 indoor facilities and provide households access to year-round swimming and aquatics-based opportunities. Also importantly, we plan to work in partnership with Columbus City Schools on this site and give more access and free swim lessons to students in Columbus City Schools. Recreation and Parks will utilize $2 million at Crum Park to update the current fishing pond and add pickleball courts. Those courts are currently in design. Whetstone Park phased renovations will utilize $3 million for Park Drive and construction of sports courts. And then the Underground Railroad playground and park. This is currently an idea we're developing with this innovative partnership with Columbus Metropolitan Library, the Shepherd community, and the Brittany Hills community. This project will honor the history of the Underground Railroad along the Alum Creek corridor. Renovations are proposed to the Antrim Lake Loop Walk, and would utilize approximately $500,000 for those improvements. So this is an overview map of some of the projects that I just discussed. There's an additional 114 locations just in the 2024 capital budget alone that are not represented in this map. Recreation and Parks utilizes an allocation model for expending its capital funding. As mentioned earlier, we prioritize the management of our existing assets, and that is why we reserve nearly half of our funding for the renovation of existing facilities and parks. However, we're also reminded daily about the need to grow, which is why we reserve 7% of our allocation for the acquisition of future parkland and 25% for new development. Much of the funds used for acquisition are used as match dollars for grants that are state or other funders. This has allowed us to acquire over 600 acres in the past 5 years for future parkland. Lastly, I want to just make a quick announcement that we are in the process of kicking off our 10-year master plan process and are seeking input from the community that will help shape the plan and the direction of the department over the next 10 years. We're also thrilled to announce that the opening of the Fran Ryan Center on East Broad Street in January of 2025. The project was funded with previous year's capital funds and will serve as a home as a sort of a hybrid programming of arts and wellness for older adults. And that concludes the Recreation Parks presentation. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair Bankston, for allowing us to share these exciting projects.
Thank you again, Deputy Director Murphy, for that presentation. And just want to reiterate, I think, the daunting task that in a growing city, Recreation and Parks has to keep up with demand. But I just want to highlight one thing that you said, and you said it in the last meeting, so I want to make sure I re-emphasize it, is this idea of equity. It's not simply about us building new facilities where the growth is going. We have to also have those same high-quality amenities in places like Linden, places like the Hilltop, and other places that have aging infrastructure. And so I just want to say thank you to the department for thinking about, yes, we have to build out where we don't have a rec center, but we can't leave the rec centers that are crumbling behind. And so we're sitting in a testament of that philosophy. And I look at this park and I think about how much progress that we have made. And we tripled the size of the rec center that was here, put amenities in it that no other rec center has, like indoor tracks and a spray park outside, and also a recording studio. Those are innovative things that under Director Bernita Reese are doing. I also want to point out too her commitment, and all of the department's commitments, but Rec Parks in particular, working with Director Jenkins and Office of Diversity and Inclusion, that this building that we are sitting in overperformed on its minority goal. And so we are committed to making sure that when we build things in this city, that the folks that look like the community it serves also serves on those projects. And so it's a hard task. But with that, I do want to ask this question. I know I asked it in the last one, just make sure that we're staying consistent in rooms. Our pools and infrastructure, can you just talk about where we are in that plan? Know that we don't have enough aquatics facilities. And I didn't ask this in the last one, but I want to make sure I throw that in. It's not just about pools, right? It's also about splash pads and other innovative ways, I think, that we have been able to react to the heat that is happening all across this country, but particularly here in the Midwest. So if you just give us an update on our aquatics plan and what we're thinking around pools and access to those types of facilities.
Thank you, Chair Bankston and members of council. We adopted this 20-year plan, and one of the things we learned in this was that from a national perspective, we're probably about half of where we should be from an aquatics amenity perspective. But it doesn't make much sense to keep adding pools if we're not taking care of the ones that we have. And so the first recommendation out of the aquatic study was to replace the existing pools. And so we've done that at Windsor and we've done it at Tuttle Pool. And our next priority, we've almost completed design at Tuttle Pool and Marion Franklin. And so those will become our next targets. And that puts us in a position then to grow. This year, I think we had 140 lifeguards. That's a pretty good year for us. So if we can continue to have that kind of, maintain that kind of level of lifeguards and staff, one of our goals is to develop internal programs that would allow for, say, students to come through the Columbus City schools or any schools, and we just kind of bring them along every year, and they become part of our team and a part of our staff. That just allows us to continue to grow that pool, sorry for the pun, but the group of lifeguards. So one of the things that the study also told us was that there's sort of a desert in the north part of the city, as well as the south and the southwest and the southeast, sort of an aquatics desert. And I think that at some point in Columbus's growth, there must have been a perception that everyone was being taken care of in those first ring 1950 suburbs, and then outside of there, with private, probably, you know? And, but as those business models don't really work all the time, there becomes these gaps. And so now we're having to go look, and we really want to fill those gaps. We think that swimming, just being comfortable in the water is a life skill that we really want to teach people. We have staff that are extremely motivated to do this kind of work. The partnership with the schools would allow us to really potentially create a curriculum within the Columbus City schools where kids could be coming through. We'll be connected to the schools there at Mifflin Middle School that will allow for that continuity of, like, can you imagine a physical education class where people are able to learn how to swim? I mean, it happens in other cities, and we've done tours in other places to see how to bring that to Columbus. So we're very excited. We're patient. We're trying to be really smart about our approach with it. And on the spray pads, we don't think that that's a single answer. It solves one problem. And we are building a sort of pipeline of locations for that helps support cooling people off. But we know that people need to learn to swim, and I think that that's going to continue to be one of our priorities.
Thank you for that. And then also when we're redoing those pools, we're increasing the capacity, correct?
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that. The new pools are just beautiful. I mean, and I'm so proud of the progress there. At Windsor Pool, for example, there was very limited ability to walk into the pool. You either had to swim or you weren't going in the pool. And so when we rebuilt it, we allowed people who aren't comfortable in the water, right? To just get in the water, and it's the gradual entry and just to cool off. And so it creates just a lot of options. We have diving wells, things that we didn't have in the past. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, council, we host pool parties to engage with the community. So far, what I've heard from our community engagement team, that mine was the best. So, I'm challenging the rest of my council members to step up. Councilmember Russell Beatty, I think you said you had a comment.
Yeah, I just want to say, well, as a Columbus kid, during the summer, Barnett Recreation Center and Livermore Pool, which does unfortunately not exist anymore, but was where I spent, they were within a bike ride or a walk from my house, and that was the thing that saved me. Unfortunately, it did not teach me how to swim, but I corrected that with this generation because my babies learned how to swim at the Aquatic Center and then later at Tuttle because that's where we do outdoor swim classes. So, so much so that my daughter wanted to be a lifeguard this summer. So we do better as we learn better, right? So I actually, this plan is one of the things I'm most excited about because I do think that we are providing folks with a world-class experience when it comes to recreation and parks and how we're thinking about how we're using spaces. One of the questions that I have is, I think, if people want their streets paved, people want sidewalks, and people want rec centers, right? And so when I especially think about, as we go further out into the city, where when you think of the far reaches of the far west, the far east, the far south, et cetera, that's where I think we probably, without looking at a study anecdotally, we probably have some of those deserts. And so how are we thinking, and sometimes it's a little tougher to acquire land because of other municipalities or other things. How are we thinking about and how do we make those decisions? You gave us like one point of reference, but how are we making those decisions and how are we getting creative about ensuring that folks, again, across Columbus, because we are so large, are getting some of the amenities and are benefiting from some of the great park systems that we have?
Thank you, council member, and thank you for sharing your experience at the pool as well. I had similar experiences riding my bike, so I remember that as well. Community centers across the city, there's certainly a demand, and we know that exists. And one of the, we regularly meet with communities, and you heard in the presentation just the volume of things today that if we don't address, we close those doors, right? So we're very clear on what we have to address, some really critical needs today in terms of our existing facilities. And so if we can't build a center somewhere, then we're bringing out our center without walls, for example. I think there are 6 or 7 locations in Columbus where we're running camps right now that are run by our staff. They have all the equipment they need and things that they need. But that's still not the solution of physical building. The other thing that we have to address that when we talk about adding a new rec center is the idea that there's a whole lot of operating associated with that too. So building something is not always the hardest. It's like keeping it, right? And then keeping it staffed and the programming and the demand. So, we look at those concentric circles of like, if there's a community in like you're describing sort of far, further out, we would say, how are they currently served? And if they're not currently served, then when we are looking at acquisitions of property, we're thinking, how flexible is that site? Could we accommodate that someday in the future? Always thinking into the future about those opportunities. And then if they are served or they're partially served, we wouldn't want to duplicate anything. So we'll go to that other organization, whoever it is that's providing some type of service, and understand what's the gap. So if you provide this, what is it that if we came in this area, we could provide that's unique and complementary and not necessarily duplicative of kind of those types of services.
And with the playbook that when you look at the vision plan, is there opportunities? Because I do think that we've done this in a few other places where there is a library that is proximate to a rec center, which is the marrying of like all the best things in a kid's like summer or after school life. But are we looking at or even thinking about the new partnership with Columbus City Schools around like, if you don't have a we may not have a pool in your school, but we have a pool proximate to your school so kids can go there to like learn how to swim. Are we looking at creative solutions like those in the future? And is that part of the vision or part of what we can look forward to in the future? I know it's hard to tell in the beginning stages, but are we looking more in that direction to try to creatively solve some of the issues that we're talking about?
Councilmember, it's a great question. And if you look at that, what's on the screen right there, the Fran Ryan Center, that's a really good example of us trying to be innovative in the way that you're describing. That site we purchased from the schools, so it was a vacant site. And we took 2 different programs in 2 different locations and consolidating them into one location, both serving the seniors and both seniors who were driving to those locations respectively. So now it's centralized. We are looking at partnerships with the schools. I mentioned essentially near Howard Community Center, creating like a community campus where we could have a community center that is during the day a shared gymnasium with the schools, and then in the afternoon and evening hours, that's when we're on. So obviously working through those logistics are complicated, but that's part of the goal. And then also, I think the example of the indoor aquatics facility is another sort of innovation around, it's their site that we're looking at together about how do we rearrange this site that makes sense for both agencies and also put in a whole bunch of protections along the way. Ultimately, just providing the best service to youth and families in that area and those that visit.
Thank you so much for answering those questions. I think I look forward to, I really encourage folks to be part of those conversations because I think innovation is what's going to get us to where we need to go. And I think we need to start thinking outside the box. There was no pun there. I thought there might be, but thinking outside the box of how we start to bring these amenities together and how do we start to have these partnerships with, our other partners that are also serving our kids, our families, and like how do we bring everything to them in a way that is beyond what we thought was possible before or what we've seen done in the past. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Banks and Deputy Director. I mean, as a proud dad of one of Columbus's newest lifeguards, he's someone that went out and got his certification, which we provide with the Red Cross for free, and is now a lifeguard making $20 an hour at age 15. How many dollars? 20. So, I need to borrow money from him on occasion. So, but we need lifeguards. And 2 years ago, it was in a critical point where we did not open pools because we didn't have enough lifeguards. And last year, because of the innovation of the Recs and Parks Department, we were able to offer bonuses and make sure that we were adequately staffing, and it's only getting better. But so I applaud them and the ingenuity of like what we're doing to make sure that we're properly staffed. But this aquatic center is so important. As somebody from the Northland area originally talking about, when you look at Woodward Park and Woodward Middle School and the North Y and all those that kind of are there together. The biggest problem that we face as elected officials is brick and mortar. We have great nonprofits out there all over this city doing a lot of great work in our community, but the one thing that they always come back to is we do not have brick and mortar space. And we have people that are teaching dance and cheerleading and other things that are leaving the city to go because they can only get space in certain places. And so the more that we can collaborate, the more that the schools can hand over the keys at the end of the day to either Recs and Parks or the Y or Boys and Girls or et cetera, the better. And so that wasn't necessarily the point of my conversation, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about, the mass of what Recs and Parks does. And so Deputy Director, you talk about facilities, we talk about our pools, and certainly we're heading in the right direction. How many parks do we have, and what is the overall goal of, a walking distance for each of our residents? Because it's a gold standard, and we're trying to achieve it. I know how many parks we have, but I want you to answer that if you would.
Thank you, Council Member. I feel like this was like a pop quiz. We have 422 parks and not all of those are developed parks. A lot of it's, not a lot of it, but some of it is future parkland, some of it's conservation area. We're also really big on preserving large tracts of land for tree canopy, as well as sort of river corridors and protecting the water and cooling everything down. So protecting and keeping trees is important to us. But we have a goal of a 10-minute walk, which is about nationally, it's a best practice. It's kind of what our city's adopted. And the rationale is like, basically that's about as what people are comfortable walking to. That's kind of how they came up with it. It's about a half-mile walk to a park, around a loop or something of that nature, then back. And so about 70% of Columbus residents now are within a 10-minute walk of a park, of park space. So it's an increase, it's an improvement. We've really prioritized acquisition of green space because it's not going to exist for a lot longer. There's a lot of competing priorities which are important. So we're going to continue until all residents have a 10-minute walk.
Thank you so much. And, I put a $1.5 million or something in there for a couple of splash pads that I hope will be built next year finally. But again, this long process of design and that type of work. I mean, you wish it could happen overnight and it could be in the next year, but there is a little bit of a process here. And I think it's important to illustrate that. I mean, one, the pool aquatic plan was being devised at that time, and then you got to go through design and all that type of stuff. If you could just talk a little bit about that process. For a splash pad, council member, is that what you're referencing? Like the process for just any project? Yeah, in general, like, when you're doing, similar to roads, I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have right-of-way acquisition typically, but what we do have is the design process and certainly what that means.
We do, council member, thank you. And oftentimes when residents are speaking with us, I'll tell them that if this is a project we're going to move forward with today, it'll be done in 4 years. Like it's just the process, and it's the checks and balances of a good system, and we're very thorough. I mean, I've only been with the city for 6 years, and I've been very impressed with kind of how thorough we are. But Recreation Parks has a commission, so prior to anything going to a city council, a contract being approved for design, we first have to go to our commission and have that approved there. So everything takes about a month longer than you want it to. But we have extremely hardworking team who are always pushing on projects, and we have hundreds of projects at any given time and locations. So we're always moving through construction and then starting another project. It's not everything is concurrent at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Questions from my colleagues. We got 3 more to get through, okay? Y'all still with me? Y'all still with me? Okay, good. Now, I'm gonna check with the city attorney's office. I think it might be a conflict of interest, but I'm gonna try to give me one of these jobs at $20 an hour, being a lifeguard, which we still need more. So if you know young folks that are looking for summer jobs, that's always a consistent job, is being a lifeguard with the city of Columbus. My dad, Alfonso Banks, was a proud lifeguard at Merlin Pool, and he remembers those days fondly. Next, we have our presentation from our Public Safety Department. Deputy Director Dan Jangadella is here with us. And Dan, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Finance Chair Bankston, Safety Chair Remy, members of council, members of the community. Thank you for allowing us to come here this evening and talk about the public safety capital budget. We are, of the 6 departments up here, we actually have the smallest piece of the pie in this case. I'm sure my colleagues are okay with that, given that the operating budget for public safety is so large. So as you'll see from the numbers, these are much lower than some of the ones. Not to say that it's any less significant. We're very appreciative of the money, and as you'll see, we're going to hopefully put to good use. So on behalf of Safety Director Kate Bashotti, we will have about new funding of $66.4 million and a carryover funding of just under $55 million for a total of $120.9 million in public safety. These projects are going to be focused on the mayor's priorities of protecting Columbus neighborhoods by designing and constructing new police and fire facilities, procuring new fire apparatus, and various improvements to other public safety buildings. These investments support safe and efficient facilities and vehicles for public safety employees and provide essential services as well as protect the lives and property of Columbus residents. These investments also promote safe and resilient communities as part of the mayor's Opportunity Arising initiative. With respect to investments in northern part of our city, the major investment is being made at the Carolyn Piedmont Avenue location, where the city will construct a public safety campus that will consist of a real-time crime center, a 911 emergency communications center, an emergency operations center, a crime gun intelligence center, and a new police substation 2, of which the current one is at Parkwood Avenue. Demolition of the site was completed late last year. An architectural design for the campus is currently underway. We anticipate bidding for this project in mid-2025, so about a year from now. And in this budget, $50 million is proposed for the construction activity. Fire Station 36, which is located or will be located at Central College and Harlem Road on the far northeast side of the city. There's $15 million in carryover funds available to construct this fire station on property that was previously acquired by the city. Public Safety anticipates construction of this fire station will commence this year with completion in late 2025. A combination of new and carryover funds totaling $3.3 million is also included for design of a police substation in the Easton area. Carryover funds were recently legislated by council to begin this design, which will replace the current substation on Alry Road. There is also $800,000 in carryover funds to upgrade the women's restroom and locker room facilities at Fire Station 24 at the corner of Morse and Call Roads. You also notice that the budget includes a number of items that are allocated on a citywide basis for public safety projects. For instance, there is $10 million proposed to procure fire apparatus, which consists of ladders, engines, EMS vehicles, and heavy rescue vehicles. These vehicles may be assigned to any of the division's fire stations across the city based upon need. The budget also includes $6.25 million in a combination of new funds and carryover funds for general renovations and improvements of police and fire facilities. We have 34 fire stations in the city. We have nearly 20 police substations as well as 3 academy buildings that need general improvements, such as pavement restorations, generator replacements, HVAC upgrades, roof and window replacements, security and life safety upgrades. So these funds will be allocated based on need for those various facilities. Finally, with respect to citywide projects, there is also approximately $4 billion in carryover funds that will be used to upgrade telecommunications, fire dispatching systems, and replace public safety radios. With respect to projects that will be funded in the coming years as part of the capital plan, yeah, I did mention Fire Station 24. There we go. So with respect to the capital improvements program, again, this is the 6-year plan that both Director Long and Chair Bankston talked about. There are 2 things funded typically when we submit the plan. That is fire apparatus at $6 million, and then also some general renovation funds at $3.5 million. With respect to, in the future, substations, fire stations, that funding is typically determined 12 or 24 months and work in conjunction with finance and management. And we anticipate that funds will be available with those exact amounts to be determined down the road. So with that, I do have a couple pictures of recent police substations and fire apparatus. I believe this is the far north police substation, which is off Sancus Boulevard. And then, of course, this is a far east police substation. And then, of course, a picture of a variety of our fire apparatus that we purchase. We do fire apparatus replacements in conjunction with fleet management. The division is underneath finance and management and giving us a life maintenance scenario, and basically we try to replace apparatus based upon years of usage and maintenance record. So with that, also a fire station, that's a rendering of Fire Station 3 on Greenlawn Avenue as well. With that, that concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Deputy Director. And just layman terms for y'all, fire apparatus means fire truck. So y'all know, y'all saw from the picture, that's something I had to learn. I said, what's a fire apparatus? Oh, you mean the fire truck with a ladder? Okay, I got it, fire truck, got it. No, thank you for that. I'm gonna kick it to our safety chair. I know he has some questions that he wants to ask.
Well, I think it's important as we talk about those fire apparatus, AKA fire trucks, to talk about the increase in costs because of COVID. Because, you know, and I could have said the same thing about refuse. Our refuse trucks cost over $100,000 more than what they did prior to COVID. I think it's important. You know, our dollar does not stretch as far as it once did. So when we talk about a ladder truck and a typical engine truck, what are we talking about in costs?
Yes, Safety Chair Remy, you're absolutely right. We can all, I guess, relate to inflation and what COVID did to our supply chain. We've seen drastic increases in, for instance, a ladder truck. Typically would cost us around $1 million to $1.2 million, and now we're pushing $2 million for one of those vehicles. Similarly, with engines, would be $600,000 or $700,000. They're upwards of $900,000 to $1 million. EMS vehicles would have been around $250,000. Now you're pushing $500,000. So yes, very expensive pieces of equipment. And of course, the lead time, unfortunately, has taken a lot longer. We've waited as long as almost 2 years for delivery of a ladder truck, which is frustrating, but everyone's dealing with the same thing, other fire divisions across the country. Unfortunately, the manufacturing market for fire apparatus is not very big. We are fortunate here in Columbus that we have two major fire apparatus manufacturing companies, Suffin, which is up on the northwest side, and of course Horton Emergency Vehicles, and they've oftentimes been our standard for a variety of reasons: cost, serviceability, et cetera, standardization. So, but even with that, it is just taking a lot longer to get apparatus. We are very appreciative with council and finance and management and the mayor. Up until 2023, we were allocated about $6 million a year. And of course, with the price increases, last year's budget was $10 million. This year's proposed at $10 million for replacement. So we're very appreciative, and we'll use every dollar that we get.
And certainly, as we think about the number of runs that this city takes, over 1 million, consistently, that means wear and tear on those vehicles. That means a quicker replacement policy. And so it's important that we invest in those things as we, try to service and make sure that, our residents are served adequately. Just again, to talk a little bit about this safety campus that's going up at Piedmont and Carolyn Avenue in North Linden. One, super excited that we were able to repurpose that property, as a City of Columbus property right within a neighborhood. And it's so important, but this is a considerable investment. We've been putting money away for several years now. It's starting to become more, as we're in the design phase of this at this point, this thing is not only going to have a call center and certainly a myriad of different components, real-time crime center, but it's also going to have a substation, a precinct that's going to run out of there as well. Could you talk just a little bit more about that? Just expound on it for just a second.
Sure, yes. Chair Remy, like you had mentioned, we have a variety of facilities we are going to bring to that site. We're very excited about it. Two parts of that, the 911 center, of course, we have an existing one, but this will be a vast improvement over that. And of course, we have a emergency operations center. Again, that facility will see significant upgrades underneath the safety campus. The two sort of new facilities or part of that project, of course, are the Real-Time Crime Center and the Gun Crime Intelligence Center, which will bring a variety of synergies together, efficiencies for police to view crime in real time, to increase our ability and be more efficient in solving crime, and also eventually allow us the ability to be more predictable about where crime may occur. So we're very excited about that. We have, with the Gun Crime Intelligence Center, a number of partners, state, the county, that'll obviously be helpful in that as well. So, and then, of course, the police substation, which we've long needed a new one up in that area. So this is a very exciting project, and as I said, we're seeing progress. We demolished the old buildings, and of course, now we're in design, and that's going well. We're very much looking forward to bidding this project next year and getting started.
Certainly appreciate the commitment of the Public Safety Department, and certainly looking forward to these investments this year in the capital budget. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next, we will have Bill Webster with our Department of Development, followed by John Lee in our Public Utilities, and then we'll take public comment. Deputy Director?
Thank you, Chair Bankston, members of council. On behalf of Director Stevens and the Department of Development, I'm pleased to present our 2024 capital improvement budget. Our budget consists of $74 million in carryover from the 23 bond sale proceeds and approximately $103 million in new proposed funding, totaling $177 million. 60% of our budget, or $104 million, is being invested into our affordable housing strategy, our #1 priority. This funding represents investments in projects providing affordable housing for families, as well as seniors and individuals experiencing homelessness, and homeownership opportunities for middle income and first-time home buyers. Build, invest, preserve, and include. This is a four-pronged strategy to achieve our affordable housing goals. These principles are the foundation of our capital planning. We need to build more housing at all price points. We need to invest in affordable housing for people making less than $50,000 annually. We need to preserve our existing housing with grants to keep homes safe. And lastly, we need to include everyone that needs access to affordable housing. $50 million is planned in the coming year for affordable housing and includes continued support for new affordable rental units, new affordable home ownership, preservation of existing home ownership, and support for those experiencing homelessness in our community. Now, currently, we have projects totaling 700 new affordable units, 100 new home ownership opportunities for middle income and first-time home buyers, and then $5 million for permanent supportive housing for those that are exiting homelessness. We are also proposing $7 million for capital grants to nonprofit partners to build or make facility improvements. Our nonprofit partners help us to expand our reach into the community. Grants this year to partners on the north end include Zora's House, the Furniture Bank of Central Ohio, and the Center for Entrepreneurial Development. In addition, we are proposing $5.5 million to facilitate real estate acquisition, supporting everything from Lincus to the development of future affordable housing. And then lastly, our annual $350,000 for shelter repairs. Over the next 5 years, we plan to continue investing heavily in community-driven developments. Our goal is $50 million annually in affordable housing, $10 million annually in real estate acquisition, $5 million annually to fund small-scale urban redevelopment projects, and shelter improvements. Our final slide includes some recent projects from our 23 investment of $50 million. We are generating $220 million of private investment from our $50 million and 1,200 new affordable housing units. We're very proud of these projects, and we look forward to more housing development. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director, for that presentation. Just want to underscore and reiterate, when we talk about affordable housing in particular, I know your last slide really hit on it, but just talk about the philosophy around that. I think many folks, when they see project with the city investment in it, they think that that's only the city putting money into it, when really it's about how do we leverage dollars, how do we get more affordable units online. So you could just talk about that philosophy, how we like to use those affordable housing dollars that we have set aside.
Chair Bankston, it's a good question. When it comes to development of housing, we sort of follow a philosophy of first and foremost, we want to develop affordable housing all over the city. We want individuals and families to have the ability to live, raise their families in the neighborhood of their choosing. The way we do this, many of our partners in the development of housing are nonprofit partners. We use our capital money as a way of leveraging further private investment. So in this case, $50 million is leveraging $220 million. The idea is that our money goes into what we call gap financing typically. Usually a developer, be it for-profit or nonprofit, they put together a capital stack that takes care of some percentage of the total project. Let's say it's 70% or 80%. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. The city then uses its capital dollars to fill in the gap in order to help achieve 100% of the funding needed for the project. And in doing so, we're able to leverage additional private funds.
Thank you for that, and that's also in combination with other state funds like low-income housing tax credits and other programs as well. And because I just want to set the stage for folks of what that $50 million, what it does and what it doesn't do, right? We don't build full projects because we wouldn't get as many units as we actually need, but it's really putting money into other projects to make sure that it becomes affordable, because I say this joke, but it's a real thing. There is no affordable housing section at Lowe's, right? There is no low-income 2x4. A 2x4 costs what a 2x4 costs. And I think what we know from past development practices is that we have to build quality. Folks deserve to live in high-quality, healthy, safe, and sanitary conditions. It also lasts longer. And so when I think about a place like Malby Place, just down the street from us, and what went into that, those are the types of projects that we want to produce for folks when we talk about affordable housing, because these are working folks who need a safe place that they can afford to call home. So just wanted to make sure I emphasize that piece. Any questions from you, Councilmember?
I do. When we talk about that line item, when we talk about our nonprofit partners and folks that we then grant dollars to, can you talk a little bit about how we make those decisions, how there's accountability within that? Like, how do we define success, and what that looks like?
Yes, Chair Bankston, Councilmember Barosa-Padilla. When we work with our nonprofit partners, these are partners that are helping to provide further services to our residents within the city. For the capital budget, these are facility improvements. So we're giving money to, for example, Zora's House to help them to make real property improvements to their facility, helping them to further serve the residents or the customers that they serve. The way we make these decisions is that through our human services programming, we evaluate what our needs are. Now, unfortunately, we're not able to fund every proposal that comes our way, but what we try to do is fund the organizations that are in the most need, that are able to help the largest section of folks that at that time period need the services.
And I know that this is not capital budget dollars, but I think because we're here and talking about it, I think it's just worth us even sharing with folks. When we have been in specific situations, I think about Colonial Village, I think about Sawyer Towers, I think about other instances where we've essentially protected some of our residents, right? And we're talking about, especially in these cases, some of our most vulnerable residents, how are we planning for those dollars in our budget? Where does that come from? Because I think it's just timely as we think about where we're making these investments and we're talking about affordable housing, how folks understand how we are thinking about it and where we are helping to fund those efforts.
Absolutely. So when it comes to Colonial Village, Sawyer Tower, we fund our emergency relocation type services through our operating budget. So with our operating budget, we have the ability, in some cases, we've been able to put folks up in hotels, keeping them safe, keeping the families safe, keeping them warm, et cetera. In other cases, through our capital budget, we're able to use capital funds to make sure that we're building out nonprofit partners with the ability to help us also provide housing, shelter, warming centers, cooling centers, conversely, this time of year, to make sure that we're providing those essential services to folks.
Thank you. I also mentioned, I didn't mention Riverview, but that was one of the other affected properties. I mean, what's unfortunate is that when we start to, when we have a list of places that are vulnerable, and I know that we are working on what that looks like for the future, but I just want to ensure, also that residents understand when we're making these sorts of decisions and investments, how we're thinking about all of it, right? How we are thinking about all of the investments, both for the future, for the unpredictability of a market that we can't always control, and why we're creating policies that protect people, how we are setting aside those funds so that we're ensuring that, should the next unfortunate case, like what we have seen happens, that those dollars are set aside, that we are still kind of keeping the trains moving with the longer term projects, but we can also be adaptive, we can also be nimble to responding to things like these unfortunate cases that aren't always within our control. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Deputy Director, and thank you to my colleague. Last, but certainly not least, we have John Lee, who's going to bring us home with our Public Utilities Department.
Good evening, Councilmember Bankston and members of council, members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Department of Public Utilities capital improvement budget and our capital improvement plan. Our proposal is $945 million in new funding for projects in 2024, meaning we have $205 million for ongoing and carryover projects. You can see that our 6-year capital plan is $5.5 billion. Our funding sources for our projects is city bonds, and we also take advantage of Ohio EPA loans and Ohio Water Development Authority loans. Unique to utilities is that the debt service is paid from utility bill payments. The services that we provide are things that we don't really think about every day, but expect them to be there when we need them. We provide water treatment and distribution. We provide over 53 billion gallons a year in drinking water to over 1.4 million residents. On the wastewater side, we have 2 wastewater plants in the south end of the city, treating and providing over 188 million gallons per day of wastewater management. We manage a stormwater system that directs rainwater and snow melt runoff to nearby creeks and rivers through our storm sewers. We're also a small electricity provider, and we manage all the streetlights in the city. We have over 13,000 customers in our electricity division, and we're responsible for over 50,000 streetlights. As mentioned earlier, the Office of Sustainability is housed at the Department of Public Utilities. This office is charged with implementing the Climate Action Plan. Our guiding principles, 1, are to provide quality, accessible, and clean drinking water. We also build and maintain critical infrastructure to support population growth and add additional capacity to meet demand. And finally, we have to meet regulatory requirements. We're also focused on providing affordable rates and providing discount programs for low-income and senior customers. Some of the major projects on the north side in the next year or two are our 4th water plant and transmission line. I'll provide a little bit more detail in some upcoming slides. This project is planned right now in the design phase, and construction is anticipated next year in 2025. Central Ohio's population is projected to exceed 3 million by 2050, and additional water capacity is needed. Blueprint Columbus is probably a program you've heard of as well. This is an innovative approach that we've taken to comply with our consent order that eliminates sanitary overflows and also invests in our neighborhoods. Some other projects in the next year are waterline improvement projects to replace those that have a high break frequency, streetlight improvements for visibility, safety, and improved aesthetics, stormwater improvement projects to mitigate flooding, and some other plant improvement projects to improve treatment technologies. Some top projects in the next 6 years, we have over $811 million in projects planned in Columbus communities on the north side. We have these projects spread across 24 Columbus communities. Just a quick snapshot of some of those on the list there. We've got some transmission line upgrades in the Rocky Fork Black Lick area, a water line project in the 5th by Northwest area, Franklinton area stormwater improvements. That's a very important project for that area, around $61.5 million. Blueprint Columbus, we're going to be focused on moving into the Mid-East area. We've got $109 million planned there over the next 6 years. To improve sewer capacity, we're upgrading our Alum Creek trunk sewer. Blueprint Columbus will continue in the Clintonville area to the tune of $136 million, where we'll be providing green infrastructure, roof redirection, lateral lining, and sump pump projects. And finally, a couple street light improvement projects, one in the University District and one along Hayden Run. The Smart Street Lighting Program is a project that hits many community planning areas. This smart street lighting project is being deployed citywide in several phases over the next several years. There are currently over 20 planned phases. Currently, we're completing phase 1 and moving into phase 2. You can see phase 2 there along the Livingston area commission border along Livingston Avenue. Each project will cost approximately $3.5 million, and what we're doing is actually converting the old high-pressure sodium luminaires to LED, and we're also upgrading the circuitry when we do that. So Hilltop is already substantially complete, and we're going to be starting along Livingston Avenue in early 2025, and we're also planning design on phase 3. The fourth water plant, a little bit more detail on that project. The picture there shows the actual site of the fourth water plant. We currently have 3 water plants, so this fourth plant will be located up in northern Delaware County. And you can see the blue line there in the other picture. That's the actual transmission line that comes down from the plant to our distribution system. It goes through the city of Dublin and some other townships along the way. So this total project, the plant itself and the transmission line, is expected to cost $2 billion. The project will provide an additional 50 million gallons per day with a design capacity up to 80 million gallons per day, or 8.2 billion gallons per year. It's estimated that this project will create over 300 jobs during construction and over 30 full-time jobs at the new plant once it's constructed. Once it's actually constructed, new commercial and industrial businesses can have confidence knowing their water demands will be met in Columbus, Ohio. Blueprint Columbus, my final slide here, just gives a little bit more detail on that program. You can see there that there's actually 4 pillars to the program: green infrastructure, roof redirection, voluntary sump pump installations, and lateral lining. This program is in compliance with our 2002 and 2004 EPA consent order. And so what we do is we use today's technology, those 4 pillars that I described, to address the source of the problem, which is rainwater getting into our sanitary sewers. So we're mitigating that through this project. Our deadline, we are under orders through the EPA to complete this program. The deadline is 2045. And to date, we've spent nearly $2 billion already on various phases. And you can see the map there of all the different planned phases we have. And if you're interested in what is happening in Blueprint in your neighborhood, you can go to that link there, and it gives a good overview and the overall phases that are going to be happening in the timeline and cost. Chair Bankston and members of council, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Deputy Director. Just one question, and you can keep it on the blueprint slide, because I know this is a huge investment for us. If you could just go back to those numbers with Clintonville, because I know they were one of the earlier phases too, and it looks like we're going back to that. Is that something that we should see in other parts of the city as well, or is that just unique to Clintonville and their investment?
It's very likely that you're going to see that level of investment in those other neighborhoods. Clintonville was, the first area that we started in, and got a lot of experience through all of the infrastructure that we've installed there. We've done all 4 of the pillars in that program, so it's very likely, even if there's not the quantity of installations, just given the fact that we've seen increased costs across the board over the years with construction, it's very likely.
Thank you for that, on that. And again, I just want to reiterate that number price tag that you all seen. That's because of how many folks we're serving, because of safe, clean drinking water, and because our sewer system, we want to keep up with the demands of the city. I want to point to that 4th water plant that we are building. A lot of city investment going in there. If you can just talk about, I know we're in certain phases of it now, but just talk about our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and what some of our goals are currently, and then I know that talks are going on with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion for further phases as well.
Chair Banks and members of council, members of the public, yes, we are very committed to achieving goals on this project, as well as our design contractors and our construction contractors. We've had quite a bit of success with our goals to date. As I mentioned, we're currently under design. We've got various phases of a project in total. So we have design, and then we have inspection, and then we have construction. And so far in design, we've already exceeded our goal. We have many subcontractors that are fulfilling their commitment. We recently entered into the inspection contract. We awarded that contract to DLZ, who is a minority firm. So they're a prime and a minority firm, and we also have a 10% goal. So we expect probably of that contract on the minority side, probably 36 million of the $60 million contract will go to MBEs. Likewise, on the 4th water plant inspection project, we've got to get those things engaged now, actually, before we bid the construction contract out. 19% of the $45 million inspection contract, or $8.5 million, is expected to be performed by MBEs. So we're hopeful with the actual construction contract that, a plant has a lot of components to it. It's got, site excavation, it's got electrical components, it's got, roadway work in there. There's just a variety of trades that are going to be able to participate in that contract. So we're very hopeful in achieving and exceeding our goals.
And thank you for pointing that out too. I think I want to commend Director Jenkins, and I'm not just saying that because I work with him closely with economic development, small minority business, but really breaking down these large packages. What we've seen in the past is we don't get minority participation, or we don't see the equity we want as a community because we put out a $2 billion project, right? And that's hard for any smaller upcoming contractor to bid on. So breaking these packages down into smaller bite-sized pieces, and also us being intentional about how do we build capacity for current contractors, and also bring in other contractors into this community to help build capacity is critical. So catalytic projects like this, the airport, as well as the courthouse, I think is going to be our commitment to making sure, again, that folks that look like the people in this room get to also build this community. So thank you for pointing out that breakdown of packages. Any questions from you, Councilmember? And before you go, I want to call up Ms. Liz Gordon-Canales, if she's here. I'll have you go to the back mic so we can keep it rolling as soon as it's time for you to take questions. But Councilmember?
I do have 2 questions. I'll ask it
I
at
probably
one
should.
time. No, I'll ask it at the same time so you can choose how you want to answer them. But going back to Project Blueprint, this is a long timeline. 2045. And I look at some of the, especially some of the, I think we've had this conversation many times before. I'm lifelong East Sider. If you live on the East Side, one thing you know about your house is that it floods. 50 years my mother's been in her house, still flooding. So especially as I look at that James Livingston, I'm particularly interested in, if you could talk a little bit about what the timing looks like and why it takes a while, or it looks like these projects take a long time. And then secondly, if you could also talk about when are we reporting out how the impact that we are seeing on Project Blueprint in some of the neighborhoods, especially, I know that we just completed Clintonville with the 4 pillars, but what can folks begin to see, and when will they start to see some of the impact of this kind of an investment in their communities, especially for, again, looking at some of these neighborhoods that have had long-time flooding issues and other water issues in their neighborhoods?
Council member, I'll address your first question. As far as Blueprint and some of the flooding that's been residents are experiencing, hopefully the project in those pillars, particularly some of the sump pump, the basement flooding issues, that will help remedy many of those cases. It's not, it's not going to solve all the problems. There's other infrastructure and construction projects like neighborhood stormwater improvement projects that kind of have to complement Blueprint along the way. But these projects, they do take a long time, and as was mentioned, you look at a project, sometimes it takes 4 years to, from design all the way to completion. That's just the nature of things, and design can sometimes take 1.5 years, and then construction another 1.5 years or 2 years. So it's a lengthy process, but we've had a lot of success, I think, and a lot of data is showing that in the Clintonville area. That is one area where we're working with Ohio State University. They're giving us a lot of information on the flow data. So that's really what it gets down to. As you make these remedies, as you install this green infrastructure, if you do these lateral linings, all of this rainwater is not getting into the storm and sewer system and charging our plants. So we're able to measure that through data, by overflows. In the past, we had so many overflows that were basically, we're discharging into the river, which obviously that's not a good thing to do. And that results in poor water quality. So we've got good data, and we're really hopeful. We don't really share that data, I guess. It's still kind of being released, but we are encouraged by it, and we're hopeful that we'll see the same in some of these other neighborhoods here, like Livingston and the Near East projects that are up and coming.
And these are all happening in phases at the same time in all of the neighborhoods, or are there some where we haven't begun some of the work?
It's a bit of an overlap. We've got some that, are in, under a different pillar, let's just say. Some, what we do is we go in and we do lateral lining first. That's the first thing we do. And so, you might have the Near East area is in design in general for, that a certain neighborhood. Meanwhile, Clintonville is under roof redirection projects. So you've got multiple different phase projects, multiple contractors working out there at the same time in different areas on different phases.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you to the public. We are done with the presentation, so thank you all for holding in there with us. $1.99 billion is not something easily that you can explain shortly, so we always want to be thorough. At least my goal is to make sure we're thorough, that we're being transparent with you all. Again, everything you heard up here, there's a website that you can go to learn more, to go through it. Continue to engage with us. If you have questions or comments, we will continue to take those from council. With that, we will move right into the public comment period and questions. And Ms. Liz Gordon-Canales, you are up first, followed by Mr. Nate Wilkins.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking in support of the proposed budget allocation made to Zoris House. and calling on our city to prioritize funding that elevates the lives of women of color. My name is Liz Gordon-Kenlis, and I'm the managing director at Zora's House. Zora's House is located in the Wineland Park neighborhood, and an investment in our organization is truly an investment in the entire city. On behalf of our staff, our Zora's House fellows, our volunteers, our members, and especially our Wineland Park neighbors, we're asking the city to please commit to $250,000 of this capital budget for our improvement project that's taking place currently. We affectionately call this capital project ZH 2.0, our new building. We want to ensure that we are able to meet the incredible demands of our growing community and support the programs and events that will be held in this new space, which includes a public cafe, community and co-working spaces, office rentals, a residency program, and much more. The mission of Zora's House is to create a safe space for women and gender-expansive people of color. And since launching in 2018, over 4,400 individuals across 5 states have visited us and attended our programs like our Women of Color Wealth Builders, our Her Way Business Builder, our Leadership Fellows, our Women of Color Equity Design Institute, and our Women of Color Owned Market. Looking ahead, Zora's House is committed to meeting the evolving needs of our diversifying community and addressing the systemic inequities that hinder the progress of women of color in Central Ohio. We have worked tirelessly to fundraise nearly $6.3 million in capital for funding, but we need the support of the City of Columbus to get to this goal. To date, we have raised $5.6 million, demonstrating a strong support and engagement with our project. And this $250,000 investment from the City of Columbus would be one of 3 final investments to get this project over the finish line. Our new building, which is absolutely stunning, will be open and available for the community this fall. So I thank you for your attention and your consideration, and I also want to echo the thoughts that when I see construction, I see progress. Thank you.
Thank you for that testimony, and again, as you saw in the notes, it is one of the things that's proposed in the mayor's budget, so council looks forward to actually taking that up, so thank you so much. Next, we have Mr. Nate Wilkins, followed by Commissioner Jasmine Ayers.
Let me say thank you, Mr. Nick Banklund. I know y'all did speak a lot about the courthouse. I would like to know when this is going to be breaking ground, and when will it be located at. I also want to talk about.
I'm just going to point this a little bit.
Okay. My fault on that. Again, I want to talk about the courthouse. I would like to know when this is going to be located at downtown, if it's going to be torn down and replaced with a new building. I also want to look at Bill Webster talk about housing. Yes, we do need more housing and more multiple duplexes. I also want to say that a lot of these people, I just want to piggyback on the mental health for a minute, because I know that's not been mentioned up in here, and I know when we talk about the mental health, where those people are going to stay, where's the resources at, and those type of things. Also, the public and safety. I do want to say thank you for the Caroline property that's getting ready to be structured for next year. Also, I want to say in closing here, the public utilities. I know we're moving on that, but that is a large amount of money. And I just want to talk about the more sustainability, that's people that's on fixed incomes, in the elderly population, and the hearing impaired. So I do like to see those stay in place. Again, I just want to thank you. I'll leave the rest of my comments as soon as I get this whole packet. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. A couple of things I will mention, and I'll turn it over to directors if I don't hit all of your points. The municipal courthouse will be located across the street from the current courthouse, so at the corner of Mound and High Street. Currently, there is a park or plaza there, is where the new facility will be built. I'm not sure what we're going to do with the old facility, so I'll turn it over to our deputy director. So that is where that is going. You had commented on utilities as well. We will make sure that you get a contact with our Department of Public Utilities. There is a program specifically for low-income and our senior citizens for water and electric, if you have city electric, but for sure, water is the biggest utility that we control. Gas and electric, we don't really get into those except, again, for that small population of electric customers. So we do have programs for our low-income folks with disabilities as well as seniors, and so we want to make sure that we get that to you. And I think there was something else that I missed that you said. Did I hit all of them?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Also, I just want to say the housing stock. Like I said, we need more of both, not just one of all.
Yeah, and I want to commend you and thank you. Every Monday, Mr. Wilkins is down at council advocating for more housing of all types in his neighborhood, and we need more advocates like you, so thank you for that. Deputy Director, do you want to talk about the old courthouse and what happens to that property when we're done with it?
Thank you, Chair Bankston, and thank you, Mr. Wilkins, for your questions. So, yes, as Chair Bankston mentioned, the new courthouse will be located across the street from the existing courthouse, which is actually owned by Franklin County. And as far as I know, there's no plans to demo that building. I'm not sure what the county's plans are for future usage on that, Mr. Wilkins, but I could certainly connect you with a colleague at the county that could help answer questions on that. In terms of timing, it's currently in phase 1 design. We anticipate that the early phases of construction would hopefully commence late in 2025. So, thank you.
Thank you for that, Deputy Director. Next, we have Commissioner Jasmine Ayers, followed by Mr. Adam Troy.
Gentlemen and lady, it's really awesome to see you all. So thank you so much for coming to our community. I hope you have enjoyed yourselves. I am not sure when I'm going to have this opportunity again, so if you'll bear with me, we're going to hit a lot of things. So I will start with public service. Absolutely love the bikeways on Hudson. There's no signage. I've seen the Amazon man driving on it. We've tried to elevate these concerns and they've kind of been stalled. So in a neighborhood like this, it's not just common knowledge what these are used for, and we really need to do some education campaigns, especially the neighbors that live right on it. People are parking on it, driving on it. I mean, it's kind of comical, but it's newly built and we want to make sure that we're preserving it and that we're being safe and that people know how to use it. So that's another thing. The trees and the brickwork with the wrought iron that were put in like years ago, they look raggedy. Like they're along Cleveland Avenue. I'm sorry, I should be specific. So this is North and South Linden, right? Like there's weeds growing up out of them. Unfortunately, the Cleveland Avenue Motor Speedway means a lot of them have been hit or bent or are gone. And so that is something that we would like to see in our community as we're thinking about reimagining Cleveland Avenue. I think the last thing is building a better two-way communication street with public service. So we turned one-ways into two-ways. We have fire and ambulance that have trouble getting down some of our streets. They've been ticketing people who park on the curb, but they park on the curb because we have a lot of stolen cars and they've gotten their car hit. And so their insurance premiums are going up, so they're getting double taxed. So I do not know the solution, but our residents are frustrated because either I'm getting a ticket or someone's running in the back of my car. Which one do I pick this month? Okay. Finance. Love the interactive budget tool. So, thank you. I appreciate that. There was one other thing. So I chair the Small Business and Development Committee, and we would really love, and I think a lot of area commissions would love to have some training on what goes into a deal, right? So as I'm talking to restaurants or businesses that we're trying to attract to the area, What are they looking for? What should we prepare for? What numbers can you give us? Are there investments? We would love to see you all. They're buzzing me. Okay, I'll be quick.
You can keep going.
Linden loves solar. So if you need a project to build solar in Linden, we want it. We have 9 million churches. A lot of them have flat roofs. Please come put solar in our neighborhood. We love it. We want our kids learning how to do it. Please, please, please. Public safety, I'm glad I came because we got spoken to about a year ago about the crime center, and then we heard nothing. So it's nice to have some updates. I'm just wondering, is there going to be a community room, or what is the community-facing aspect? We're grateful. I'm excited about it. The city needs this, but we don't want people just driving in and driving out, right? We want this to be a place where we can learn things.
Before you move on, Commissioner, let me have him address that so that we
Yep.
can address that in real time, and we'll let you keep going.
Yeah, I think with respect to most of the campus will be not accessible to the public. Now, the substation, I know we have an engagement team that's working with our architect. I don't know how much they've been out in the community yet, but I will follow up and I'll give you my card. We can talk about that. But I think with respect to the real-time crime, the 911, that won't be the place for a community room, but the substation may be. They will be two separate buildings. The plan as it sits today, the northern part of that property will be real-time crime 911 EOC. The southern part of that property will be the substation. So that would probably be the most likely opportunity to talk about something like that.
Cool.
And even with that, Deputy Director, because we're in design now, I know that we're thinking about our substations like we did many years ago. I think it's Pride Centers or what have you. And some of those have worked well, some of those haven't. There may be even opportunity on the site itself in that southern part to have some type of recreational activity or something where officers can engage with community as well. Is that a possibility?
Basketball court goes a long way.
Yeah, again, I think it'll just depend on how much real estate we have there. The main emphasis right now in the design is for the real-time crime, CJIC, 911. But again, I'll certainly talk to our partners that are working with the architect and see where they're at with that. But again, that'll be a separate building on the southern part of that property.
I appreciate that. I won't be at the basketball court. I can referee, but I won't be playing.
All right, thank you. Next, development. Wondering when we're going to see stiffer financial penalties for developers that don't want to meet that affordable housing criteria. I mean, I think we're letting them off the hook right now. I do understand that as we increase supply, cost comes down. So we just need to build a lot of things, but let's at least get something out of them ducking and dodging those things. So I was wondering if there are plans to increase the financial requirement.
So it's a good comment to make. We've been having conversations with regards to, as we've grown the CRA program, how do we monitor this and how do we ensure compliance? Having lots of conversations there. So the answer is yes. We're thinking about it. We're looking at it. You had made a comment earlier with regards to how a small business financial deal comes together. I'd like to get your contact information. I'm going to introduce you to Ariana, our small business manager. She will be an amazing resource for you in that area.
Awesome, thank you so much. This next thing, more of a comment. Would love to support any lobbying that happens to the federal government to increase funding around housing. It is impossible for people who have to have balanced budgets to build enough stuff. So we just need the federal government to step in, and I think many communities around the city would be welcome to support any sort of effort around that. I love a good march, so just let me know.
I will say to that, not to get political, but one of the tools that we have at the federal level is the low-income housing tax credits. Those are administered by organization here locally, OFA, so the states administer it. And what I'm seeing, what is concerning to me, and I've raised these concerns to several representatives, is that they are spreading it like peanut butter across the state and not allocating enough tax credit deals to municipalities like Columbus and hell, just Franklin County in general, areas that are growing at a rapid rate. And that's not to say that our friends in rural places also shouldn't have access to affordable housing, but the demand is so much higher here. So simply starting with our state legislators to say, allocate more tax credit deals to cities because we will take them. Literally in one of the last rounds, they were sitting on tax credits because they were waiting for rural counties to apply, right? And so the Franklin County, we got a lot of our 3 projects, which is, as you all know, is nowhere near enough. And so the city of Columbus will never, ever be able to build enough housing on our own. We have to have state, we have to have federal dollars, and we have to have them unapologetically put into regions like this that are growing, and not only growing, but the economic engine of our state and everyone else that benefits from it. So thank you for raising that point, because it's not just a city issue that we have to face alone. We need everybody and all partners at the table, and also our regional partners and the suburbs. I won't call them out here today, but they know who they are. We need them to get on board with us to build more housing. We need more supply online to be able to meet the demand that's coming here. And so it's going to take all hands on deck. Columbus is raising our hand to do what we can, but we need everyone else to step up. So I'll get off my soapbox on that one.
No, I just want to say thank you, especially to our now more senior council members. You all are doing an amazing job. And don't laugh at me. I'm being so serious.
We're laughing because
We're
in
more
any other city,
senior.
we would say Jasmine, not Commissioner Ayers. But yes, and now I'm more senior, I
But
guess.
thank you so much, you all. We really appreciate it.
Chair, Commissioner, I did want to say 2 things. Thank you for putting the signage on bike lanes on our radar. We are acknowledging that this is something we're exploring with the Department of Public Service, is to understand, similarly to if there was a roadway project, right? Or like utilities, like is doing a lot of work right now. Some of your utility companies would put a sign that says, this is your taxpayer dollars at work, or this is what this project is. We're understanding the need for that, and we're in the process right now of exploring what that looks like and using technology. So you could scan something, it would take you to a page to tell you more about what the projects are. So thank you for putting that on our radar, because that's helpful for us to also understand what that looks like, especially around bike lanes where we're going to be installing more or shared use pathways for people to really understand what the actual purpose of them are. And so I just wanted to address that. And then also the one-way to two-way, we hear you. That's something that we're talking about as well, to have conversations, especially with, I feel like every time I come to Linden, that is something that I hear, and folks know their neighborhoods. Who knows your neighborhood better than the people who live there every day and travel these streets? And so that's something that soon we will hope to come and have a conversation so that we can learn more. And then lastly, with Cleveland Avenue, we'll look into that and see what we can do, and then, kind of take it from there. But thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I also do want to shout out to finance, because for Jasmine Ayers to comment y'all on interactive budgeting tools, she didn't advocate it. Now listen, I got beat up for years. I became the technology chair 2 years ago. I finally got the website updated, so now y'all updating the technology.
When you weren't even a senior council
As long as when I come into Linden, if I get points with Jasmine Ayers, then I'm good. So that's all I'm saying. Adam Troy, you're up, sir.
First of all, good to see all of you here. We always welcome you in our community, Linden. I'm laughing because Councilman Banks, I made that mental note to share with the finance deputy director, because Jasmine Ayers doesn't compliment anybody on a good job. So kudos to you. I see Director Jenkins here, and I have been around long enough, Director Jenkins, to now have to follow Jasmine Ayers in presentations, which never happened, and I have to refer to her publicly as my commissioner. Jasmine, wonderful job. It's just great to see some things moving along. I'll be brief. My comments are really around and directed towards the Deputy Director of Utilities with respect to smart street lighting. And a bit of context, some in the room know 10 years ago, I was actually the #2 guy for Detroit's modernization of the street lights. So I feel for what you have to go through in our city here. Detroit in its height had roughly 88,000 street lights. 10 years ago, that number went down to 20,000 for divestment. So literally only 1/4 of the city was lit. My job was to come in as the number 2 guy and put in place 64,400 streetlights, which had never been done before inside of 4 years, which those of you who understand the politics of that, it's really a 10-year process, right? So I'm noticing our plan here, and along the Cleveland Avenue corridor, there does not appear to be a like-for-like replacement. The streetlights that are there are phenomenal, but when they get knocked down, they're being replaced with a different sort of luminaire, and in some cases, a different sort of pole. So if you could speak to that. And then secondly, Chair Bankston did address this, and I heard that with respect to the MBE participation, and I'm sure Director Jenkins and I will have some conversation. I heard the number relative to the inspectors, but not the numbers relative to the design and on the construction side. Don't know if you have those numbers yet, but those are both important. I also raised those because in Detroit, we had a very difficult time initially identifying a MBE to be able to convert to a prime. We actually went inside the system, found somebody who worked at the street level, brought him out, invested in him as a prime, and he became a phenomenal contractor. So just wondering what are our plans to increase capacity, but to also grow new people, because I have some idea of what the monetary level of those contracts are, and we're beginning to see people naturally from outside of the city. And when we saw that in Detroit, we made a concerted effort to make sure that we were growing our own, not necessarily bringing in other companies that were just ready, made to do it. So those are my two questions.
Councilmember Bankston, members of council, I'd be happy to address these questions. As far as the street lighting project on Cleveland Avenue, I look here, in the future, we do have a project plan there. I don't know all the details, but I can get you some more details on that. It's going to be in design in around 2028. So we've got some changes happening. I don't know all the details. Again, I can give you my contact information. As far as whenever they're doing replacements out there and they're putting up a different pole, I don't know all the details why they do that. It may be just what they've got in stock and what they're, installing this year versus prior years. But the one thing I'll mention about smart street lighting is, yes, it's an ambitious plan, and we can't do as much as we want to do just based on funding. Our division of power has a very, very small capital program. We just received $10 million in bond proceeds, and that, that doesn't go very far. Given that each phase costs $3.5 million, we'd gobble that up, in no time, and we have a lot of other infrastructure that we've got to invest in. So really, the division is looking right now about what it needs to do to increase its capital plan, invest in its infrastructure more. I know that many communities, this community, all throughout the city want more streetlights. It provides safety, better aesthetics, and better lighting. So that's that. Hopefully I addressed that, and I'll get with you on some more details. As far as the MBE participation in the fourth water plant, on the design side, what we're seeing, and we do a lot of design projects, and I'm not just talking about the fourth water plant, but we see really high participation from the design firms on a lot of our projects, which is great. The prime might be a non-MBE, and we see them meeting and exceeding on the design side, like 25%, and that's great. We might set a goal at 15%, they come in at 25, and they meet that, and we're really happy about that. As part of that project, the fourth water plant, one of the scope components of the design firm is to really engage and find and communicate this project out to the community and ensure that this is going to be a diverse project, that we are going to have participation. It's not an easy thing to do. There's always the element of capacity. Everybody's so busy around here. There's contractors, minority contractors that might be here, but they may be tied up on other projects, and based on the timing of when we let the project, they may or may not be available. And I think that's really one of the biggest issues is the capacity. It may be here, but are they available, and can they get into contract with the prime as a subcontractor? But with that particular project, again, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity. We don't have goals set right now on the construction side. We just have them set on the inspection and the design. So we should, later this year, we're breaking it up. We're going to do some site work and an electrical substation. That's a $250 million project. We're working with ODI right now on the goals for that. So that's going to be the first phase. But then the major project, that's still undetermined. And we're reviewing with ODI kind of a breakdown of what the components are of that. They're surveying, those trades, how many electrical contractors we have, plumbing, you name it, technology. It's a broad scope of skill sets with that project. So again, we're hopeful, and, I wouldn't be surprised if, we're 20%, if not more, on these, on the goals for the fourth water plant.
Thank you for that, Deputy. Thank you for that, Deputy Director. And we will definitely follow up with you, Mr. Troy, on the street lights piece, because I definitely know I've noticed that. And I know one of the things that we are trying to convert to more LED lights. If that's the case, we do need to have a conversation with the community, because I know we advocated heavily for those decorative street lights. And when they are mismatched like that, it definitely, it's more of an aesthetic thing, but also I think it just is not consistent, I think, across the community. So we got to figure that piece out. I also think I've noticed that some of the new streetlights have sensors on the top of them, which are kind of a part of our smart street lighting schedule. So we'll get back to you on how we're doing that, what the phasing is, and how we figure that piece out for sure. And then, of course, make sure and I know you have the contact, but we'll have a follow-up conversation with Director Jenkins on those minority goals. Last but not least, we have Mr. Ben Keith. Is Mr. Ben Keith present? Nope. Okay. Mr. Ben Keith is not here. We do have his contact information, so my office will follow up with him to make sure we get his testimony, as well as I have to do shout out our chair, Ms. Carol Perkins. She signed up. I know she is out of town, and so we will make sure that we get her testimony as well. Seeing no additional questions or comments from my colleagues or those watching, this concludes this evening's hearing. I do want to finish by, again, thanking all of the department leaders that were here, as well as Mayor Ginther, for putting forward this robust capital budget that includes basic infrastructure needs that we have as a city, but also investments in some of our external partners who are doing critical work in our community. Again, want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Barroso de Padilla, as well as Councilmember Remy, who were joining us present, as well as all my other colleagues that I serve with on council, who are working behind the scenes, as well as engaging with community members to make sure that we take input. And again, want to thank all of the residents who took the time out to participate and be with me here for this amount of time. I appreciate y'all. And also for those that were watching. Before I close, any closing comments from you, Madam Vice Chair, before I wrap up?
No, thank you again, Chair Bankston. Thanks for our residents for hanging in there. It was a long night, but we appreciate not only your advocacy this evening, but your continued advocacy, especially as I look around this room and I see so many friends and folks who continuously come out to advocate for your communities. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you to our directors for taking the time to be here and being so thorough with your answers to educate our community and educate us as well throughout this process, even as a senior council member.
Now we're senior. That means a lot of things.
Right.
But no, again, thank you all. And I just want to reiterate, this sort of civic participation is essential for municipal government to operate effectively. This is really what separates cities from our state and from our federal partners, that we're here with you in this room, listening, understanding what's going on. That is how we will continue to be the Columbus that we all want to be, is by us having this dialogue and this conversation. Doesn't mean that we always get what we want exactly when we want it, or it doesn't also mean that it's falling on deaf ears, but we really want you to know that we are hearing you, we're taking those concerns seriously, and trying to make sure that we're making the most strategic and best investments for you, the taxpayer, because at the end of the day, this is all of our dollars going back into our community. The final hearing will take place tomorrow, Tuesday, July 9th, at the Columbus Fire Training Academy, located on the far south side at 3639 Parsons Avenue, again, starting at 6 p.m. It will also be streamed live on all of the city's various channels. If you would like to speak at the hearing, you should please email my legislative analyst, Jonathan Brown, who's in the back, at jbbrown@columbus.gov prior to the hearing. Also, again, if you know folks that have other feedback that they want to give, they can also email that. It's Jonathan, and we will make sure that we enter that into the record as well. Thank you all for being here. Have a great night.
Get home safe.
What is the clapping?